Quinnipiac, 9-point swing towards Trump. CNBC, 10-point swing towards Trump. CNN, 14-point swing towards Trump. New York Times, 11-point swing towards Trump. All of these polls are showing massive double-digit swings from where they had Trump in 2020. And you break down some of the crosstab data and I looked at a deep dive of Harvard and YouGov, where we have a lot of their crosstab data. And here's some of the swings. So, they have a 13-point swing towards Trump in YouGov. But amongst women, it's a 16-point swing.
Yeah.
Amongst black voters, it is a more than a 30-point swing. Amongst Hispanic voters, it's a 30-point swing. Amongst millennial voters, it's a 25-point swing. Amongst independent voters, it's a 20-point swing. And YouGov also, this last poll they did, they said, here's Trump versus Biden, and now here's a generic Democrat versus a generic Republican for the White House. Trump leads Biden by 3, and in the same poll amongst the same voters, a generic Democrat beats a generic Republican by 3. This completely refutes the entire premise that Steve Deace and all these people have, and Jesse Kelly and the rest for the DeSantis camp. They're just completely wrong, because they have a mythical voter that doesn't even exist anymore. Most of them are, frankly, just, as we were mentioning, the old George W. Bush Iowa voter, literally dead. Because they're missing the massive shift amongst millennial voters. When you compare where Trump does better than generic Republicans, on average, he's doing 6 points better, but he's doing 8 points better amongst women. He's doing 17 points better amongst black voters, 16 points better amongst Hispanic voters, 14 points better amongst millennial voters, 10 points better amongst urban voters, and by the way, 6 to 7 points better amongst both urban and suburban voters. So what all of these people are missing is similar. Harvard, you look at the net favorable rating, and if you look at the net intensity rating, Trump's net intensity rating, as you've been noting, has been mostly underwater throughout his presidency. That's the net very unfavorable versus very favorable. And now that number is as low as it's ever been in some of these polls. It's now down to -7, for example, the net unfavorable rating, the intense rating, only -7, whereas Biden is -20. In 2020, Biden was -5, Trump was -19. So you're talking about a swing of 25 points in intensity. And where is that swing taking place? Well, amongst voters under 50, Trump is now net positive in that intensity rating. Amongst Hispanic voters, it's dead even. Amongst black voters, it went from -60 to -30. I mean, you're seeing all of the swings are intensified. So there's these massive swings in general, but they're overwhelmingly disproportionately in one group: younger Gen Xers, millennials, and older Zoomers, and who are non-college, or a lot of these people have some college or a college at a local small school, because the working class keeps getting more educated, but that doesn't make them any less working class. It's one of the great myths of the Democratic majority analysts and future majority analysts. They think that it's because people got a college degree that they're liberal, not because of where and when and how few people got that degree in the past. But putting that aside, it's overwhelming these working class millennials under the age of 50 who are swinging by 20 to 25 points. And if you look at, say, black, independent, working class millennial men, it's maybe 3-4% of the whole electorate, but it's a little bit more in places like Philly and Milwaukee and Detroit and some key cities in the election. You're talking about swings of 40 to 50 points, right? I mean, it's extraordinary. You're talking about people who were reflexively anti-Trump 4 years ago, 8 years ago especially, who are now pro-Trump. And the issue that's driving it is the economic issues, because what's important is this massive swing is not a partisan realignment. It's not people saying, I'm no longer a Democrat. It's not people saying, I'm now a Republican, as is reflected in the generic poll testing. It's people saying, I'm not with Biden no matter what. And I'd rather be with Trump than with Biden. And for some of them, I want to be with Trump. This is a pro-Trump, anti-Biden, working class, economic-driven movement that everybody is missing. That is why the whole 2024 electorate is totally changed.
Which really goes to what we have been shown when we ask people, who did you vote for? Who would you vote for? Now, I've been looking that up because of our conversations about the history of our own polling with these groups. Overall, 8 to 12% of Biden voters say in any given month. Last month, it was 12. was that right at that high range that we've been finding for about a year. But 8 to 10%, so average it out around 10, right? Say that they would vote for Trump now, even though they voted for Biden in 2020. By the way, Emerson.
All right, this is called an I told you so moment. All right, and I got to go re-say everything I just did. This is called an I told you so moment at the end of the year because this is months ago. I'm playing that clip and I had to stop it, even though there's more I wanted to put in there. It was by Will Grice, who follows, I think, both Barnes and I on locals. And Barnes supposed to be here real soon. But yeah, basically talking about this shift that everyone's talking about now. But back then it was like, oh, what are you, crazy? What are you, nuts? And while we do this, while we wait for Robert, there is something I've been meaning to read a number of shows on What Are the Odds. I mean, on Inside the Numbers, it came out last week, and Robert just mentioned something about he made a reference. We have the emerging Republican majority here. There's a whole bunch of emerging majority theses, and there's the emerging Democratic majority. It was written by Ray Teixeira and someone else, but he just did a column last week that I thought was important because the point Barnes was making is that if you get this high with working class voters, and I've been saying this for years, eventually there's going to be overlap into other demographics. And the emerging Democratic majority, as Byler or whatever had said when Biden was elected, that may be the last time you're ever going to see that. And then from now on, it's going to be, if the Republicans keep moving the way Trump has moved, they're going to bury that theory because Teixeira's theory relied on several things that the Trump era broke up and busted. And as we go into the new year, the question Steve Kornacki asked, and I'm probably going to play that clip, he asked on NBC yesterday on the panel, he said, we're all going to be watching this going into this new year. And come election night, he broke down a bunch of different counties that mattered to him. And one of them, of course, was Miami-Dade, 70+% Hispanic. And we're going to know in some of these areas that are reporting early, Miami-Dade is one of the ones we're going to get results from right away. We're going to know pretty early whether or not, number one, this was real, and it is real. Number two, how much? And number three, are other Republicans going to reap the rewards of this? And as of right now, the answer to other Republicans is no. So let me read this while we wait here. And I got a couple other things I want to show too, but I could keep going with that article. I could keep going with that clip forever. In that whole 30 minutes of Barnes and I talking about what was the polling showing in 2020 and where are we now? That was, give you, he reshared it in September. That clip is from the summer. All right. So this has been going on now for quite a while. And it's early summer, actually. It was last second or third episode before. All right. So, 'tis a sad song, Teixeira writes. Swing state working class blues. I've got those mean old swing state working class blues. I wouldn't exactly recommend this as the Democrats' campaign theme song, but it would encapsulate a lot of what appears to be happening to them these days. A run of national polls have had Biden losing to Trump, but even worse, so have a number of swing state polls. That's a weird sentence. Because are we just starting to assume that Trump could win the popular vote pretty easily, but then still lose the electoral college? That should raise everybody's eyebrows. We heard that crap against Hillary Clinton in 2016. Yeah, you know what? He could end up winning the popular vote, but there's no way he's going to win the electoral college. He lost the popular vote, won the electoral college. Barely lost it, but lost it. With Biden 4 years ago, almost now, 3.5, over 3, he lost it by twice as much, but barely lost the electoral college. Makes me a little bit nervous when I hear statements like that they seem to think the battleground states are so fortified or something that, Trump could win by the margins we're seeing in these polls, and yet somehow Biden still pull it out in the swing states. I think that's crazy and asinine. We just did the giant Rust Belt poll. Huge survey. And the big six, right? We call it. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa, Ohio. There's just no way. And now with the national poll that we're getting ready to release now, I don't see how it's possible. But I do see what he's talking about. Not as bad as, for instance, in Michigan with what CNN is seeing, but nationally, it's really across the board. In the swing states, it's across the board. So this is the worst trend that some of these Democrats have going. The latest of the Michigan and Georgia poll by CNN. Michigan and Georgia by CNN. In the former, Biden is behind by 10 points, Michigan. In the latter, he is trailing by 5 in Georgia. Peering into the crosstabs, it is clear that Biden's woes in these states have a lot to do with declining support among working class voters. Notice, he did not say working class whites. Let's review some of the relevant data, starting with Michigan. And again, folks, if you're going to improve your standing with working class voters, not just working class whites, you're going to improve your standing with women. We were just hearing Barnes talking about. You're going to improve your standing with some of the younger voters. There's only so many working class, especially whites, between 50 and 64. In CNN's Michigan poll, Trump is ahead by 21 points among working class, non-college voters, while Biden is ahead by 10 points among college-educated voters. But Michigan is an overwhelmingly working class state, according to States of Change projections. Michigan should be around 71% working class eligible voters in 24. So this is a very unfavorable pattern for the Democrats. By the way, I'll share that link. You could check it out yourself, though. Just Google it, States of Change. It is a left-wing site without a doubt. However, there's a lot of good stuff on it. Compared to Biden's successful effort in 2020, the fall-off in working class support suggested here is precipitous. According to the States of Change data, Biden lost these voters by a mere 2 points in 2020. So the current deficit of 21 points represents a massive 19-point swing against him. In contrast, the college-educated swing against him in the CNN poll looks quite small, a 12-point advantage among these voters in 2020, compared to a 10-point advantage now. So in other words, Biden even lost ground among those who were educated. And by the way, I don't think Trump just won non-college voters by 2 points in Michigan. It wouldn't have been a 2-point race. Other findings from the poll underscore the hole Biden is in among states' working class voters on whether Biden's policies have improved or worsened economic conditions in the country. 60% of working class Michigan voters think his policies have worsened conditions, 3 times more than the 20% who believes his policies have improved them. That's huge. The poll asked voters about several characteristics about whether Biden and Trump had exactly the characteristics they would like to see in a president. Close or not, what you want in a president. On Biden, 61% of the working class in Michigan say his policy positions on major issues are not what they'd like to see in a president. Worse, 65% of these voters believe Biden's ability to understand the problems of people like them is not what they want in a president. And worse yet, 72% said that Biden's sharpness and stamina isn't what they want to see in a president. In contrast, strong majorities of Michigan working class voters see Trump's major policy positions, his ability to understand the problems of people like them, and his sharpness and stamina as exactly what they'd like to see in a president, or close enough. Biden is wont to wave away his troubles by saying, "Don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative." When it comes to working class voters in Michigan, that is not a comparison at present that does much to mitigate his problems. Moving on to Georgia. In CNN's Georgia poll, Trump is ahead by 14 points among working class voters, while Biden is ahead by 7 among college-educated voters. Georgia, too, is an overwhelmingly working class state, likely around 67% working class eligible in the next election, putting the Democrats in a very poor position. Now, he's saying eligible. He's not saying what the electorate of that state is going to look like. It could, though. It could. Problem Republicans have had in these states when Trump's not on the ballot is that they don't get those votes to come out like that. They do well with the margins. They do terribly with the share of that group within the electorate. In 2020, Biden lost Georgia's working class voters by just 6 points. So his current 14-point deficit is an 8-point swing against him. And his current 7-point lead among college educated is only 3 points less than his lead among these voters in 2020. As in Michigan, working class defections are driving the move away from Biden to Trump. It is worth noting that while CNN does not supply breaks for the non-white working class voters, inspections of the internals of these polls indicate that in both states, the swing away from Biden among non-white working class voters is likely greater than the overall working class swing. Okay, let me say that again. The swing away from Biden among non-white working class voters is likely greater than the overall working class swing. I'm going to give you a little bit of a tidbit of information right now. The share of the Hispanic vote that Donald Trump is getting in this national poll we're about to release is probably going to edge out his record ever in our polling. Biden may have, among Hispanic voters, Biden may have a somewhere in the ballpark of a 5-point lead. That's it. You know, we, unlike others, have not overstated Republican share of non-white votes. We just haven't. We've had Trump's trend up for our entire polling for over the years since 2016. We've showed it was not huge overestimation the way that we had seen other pollsters. Same goes for black voters, by the way. It has been fairly consistent. He is around 2 out of about 20%. 2 in 10. Fox News actually had him at 32% in their poll that was just released yesterday. 32% of the black vote. I think that's a little bit nuts. But sampling errors for subgroups are higher. I also thought that in Minnesota, it was probably a little bit high. But reading what Ray Textera is saying here, our poll in Minnesota in the Rust Belt poll is probably right. Especially with the entrance of third-party candidates, Donald Trump is probably going to edge out Biden in the state of Minnesota. Or at least he would today. Biden only won Minnesota by 7 points. That is not that huge. He won Virginia by more. He won Colorado by more. Everyone was talking about that poll in Colorado the other day. If you're Textera, you're going to argue that's not a good poll for Biden. That goes hand in hand with what you're seeing in Michigan and in Georgia. That is a decline in the share of the support for Biden among these key groups. By the way, New Mexico was closer than Colorado. Colorado has a lot of young, liberal voters. That's why Bernie Sanders did better there in his nominations against both Hillary and Biden. The Georgia CNN poll has the same questions as the Michigan poll, so it is possible to look at the same Biden evaluations. Georgia working class voters are far more likely to think that Biden's policies have worsened economic conditions, 58%, than improved them, 22%. As for desired characteristics in a president, strong majorities of Georgia working class voters, it's Georgian, Ray, Georgian. Working class voters see Biden as not having what they'd like to see in a president on major policy positions, his ability to understand people like them, and especially the sharpness and stamina to do the job. With Trump, it is exactly the reverse. On all three of these characteristics, strong majorities of Georgia's working class voters see him as having exactly what they want in a president or close enough. Now, CNN also recently released an extensive national poll that showed, and by the way, I find it funny that all these left-wing so-called gurus and election experts cite CNN right? And of these so-called other high-quality gold standard polls, CNN is conducted by SSRS. SSRS has changed their methodology to effectively mirror ours. That's just a fact. All of those things they thought weren't as high quality as a live caller interview, guess what? Go look at their PDFs, methodology statements, and you will see they're using peer-to-peer. They're using online. They are using digital targeting and supplementing some of it with live caller. Number one, live caller is a waste of friggin' money. That's the truth. Number two, I could reach a much more representative sample through a peer-to-peer texting campaign than I can live caller, and you could still interview them live if you wanted. You just don't have to be a little bug in their ear going, "Nyeh, nyeh, 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 nyeh." Some key findings. Biden's working class approval rating on handling the economy is just 26%. Among the college educated, in contrast, it's a more respectable 43%. His approval rating on helping the middle class is a mere 28% among working class voters. On handling crime, his rating at 31% among these voters is scarcely better. On which party is closer to voters' views on issues? And I see your thing, Laura Barnes is coming. On which party is closer to voters' views on issues? Working class voters favor Republicans over Democrats by 16 points on the economy. Intriguingly, the parties are essentially tied among Hispanics on this issue. On immigration, working class voters prefer the GOP by 22. Even more intriguingly, Hispanics favor Republicans over Democrats by 6 points on the immigration issue. Oh my God! All these years later, and I assume some are good people. He called Mexicans all Mexicans rapists and murderers. You can't win Hispanics with this radical argument. Meanwhile, ignoring not only the actual votes, huge surveys like the Florida poll, huge surveys like the Cuban poll, which interviews other Hispanics, not just Cubans. Doesn't always come to machismo. They agreed with him on every single issue. Immigration and trade was huge for them. Working class voters also favor Republicans by 18 points on crime and policing, 12 points on America's role in the world, 6 on helping the middle class, and 4 points on education. Listen, this is not that surprising considering if you've looked at the Morning Consult poll, which again, Morning Consult's a poll you got to look out for. But for the love of God, folks, that's Morning Consult's record from 2020. Biden +8 nationally. They doubled Biden's support, they overestimated him by double. Look at every single battleground state there. They have Trump leading on union issues. Union issues. He's only down by 2 on abortion. The only regret I have from this poll is because it is the Christmas poll that we did. And by the way, you're going to see some results from it. The only regret that I have from doing it is that it became such a large poll. It's my philosophy. I don't like big polls that bog down people and then they don't, or long. Oh my God. Either way, I'm stepping in it, aren't I, guys? I don't like lengthy duration interviews because then people, certain groups of people just don't have time to hang around. They'll bail. So I would have loved, maybe next time we'll ask about who do you trust more to handle these issues. And by the way, we're going to do a Trump v. Biden comparison and a Republican Democrat comparison, because what we're measuring, and I can't wait to show Robert when he gets on here, what we're seeing is that they have a very long way to go to catch up to Donald Trump. And what do they plan on doing with the Democratic House? And maybe a tiny majority in the Senate. They've got to get their act together. The strongest area for Democrats among these voters is abortion. And even here, they only had a single-digit 8-point lead far less than their lead among the college educated. Almost half, 47% of working class voters, are very worried that the cost of living will be too high for them to continue living in their current community. That's freaking sad. Another 32% are somewhat worried, for a total of 79%. That's a disgrace. For the United States of America, that's a disgrace. And you're going to see these chameleons now because reality is starting to hit them. You're going to see these chameleons now attempting to change the color of their skin and blend in. Because real world lived experience informs rational policy choices. Biden's path to victory in 24, of course, goes through the key swing states everybody talks about. But people should realize that the path to victory in those swing states goes through the working class voter in those states, voters among whom he has been losing critical support. He and his campaign will either fix this problem or they will lose. And then they and the country will really have those swing state working class blues. I don't know what that means, right? Because frankly, you don't live with these people. So what the hell are you talking about? The country will have those blues. They have the blues right now, you schmuck. They gave your boy a chance. He f***ed it up. Here's his article about the Democrats having, it's not as bad as you think, the Hispanic voter problem. It's worse. Which we're not going to go over. We're going to go over a couple of things because I showed this I did a short stream before this, before the show, but very clearly there are more people watching. So I want to show you guys this real quick. All right. Hold on, let me get a sip of water in my throat. Everybody's sick, right? Everyone's so sick, the doctor called and canceled the appointment for the kid because he's sick. I kid you not. All right. Make sure I hit the right one this time. Okay. Bear with me. And if you were watching last hour or in the noon hour, bear with me. Everyone's got to see this. This is Donald Trump and Joe Biden among voters under 30 that Robert was talking about in that video. As you can see, Donald Trump is already several points higher than he was with his vote share with these voters in 2020. And as you can very clearly see, Joe Biden has cratered some 20 plus points. 20% roughly are undecided. So let's assume these guys go back to Joe Biden. All right. Many of them. Even if every single one of them went back to Joe Biden, Donald Trump would still have improved among voters under 30. I went back and looked. He was getting killed in our final Epoch Times poll. That was Biden +4. He was getting killed. In August, he was like in the 20s or something. Or I may have it reversed. 20s in the final, 31, something like that. And Biden was riding high. But we don't have to assume because we forced that 20% to decide. And here's what we found. They basically split between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Again, you can clearly see. Out of all of those voters right there, 477 interviews with voters under the age of 30. 95 of those voters told us they were undecided, which accounts for roughly 20% of that sample. As you can see here, every single one of them, all 95, were made to decide. And they split the vote 50.5 to 49.5. Again, sampling errors for subgroups are higher, but this is a big effing deal. This tells you it ain't going to be that way. Not this time. Here, those very same voters, when you ask them simply about the generic ballot, as you can see, Republicans are running more than marginally below Donald Trump, and Democrats are running marginally higher than Joe Biden. Putting it together, Donald Trump is outperforming Republicans by 10 points more, slightly more than Republicans are down ballot. You know what? The hell with it. Let me bring in Robert. He's here now because Robert, I played a clip from months ago, brother, where you and I had been talking about the shift in votes. This is like 6 months ago. And this guy Will from Twitter, which I tagged you in, you retweeted it. I mean, this is even far back when Will Grice said, when everyone started talking about these trends, Will Grice was like, hey, you know what? Not for nothing, but Baris and Barnes were all over this months ago. Here's the clip. And I ran that clip in the beginning because now everyone's talking about it, Robert. But let's not pretend like everybody was talking about it 6 months ago. They weren't. And now you even have the author of the emerging Democratic majority shitting his pants. Let me get your take.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a combination of a victory lap and a reminder to everybody why the benefit and utility of watching our show is. And following you on a constant basis, which is if you wouldn't be surprised at any of these things that have happened here as we wrap up 2023, if you've been watching the show at the beginning of 2023, where we talked about that there was a shift taking place, where we predicted that DeSantis's campaign would fall apart when he was leading in many betting election markets to get the Republican nomination. We forecast that all the attacks on Trump would only make him stronger, kind of like Godzilla or King Kong, and that the net effect of it would be he would be in a insurmountable position in the Republican primary by the end of the year. And now he's getting over 70% of the support in a wide range of recent surveys, and dominating in the betting election markets there as well when he was an underdog to start the year to even win the Republican Party nomination. We forecast that Robert Kennedy's campaign would surge within the Democratic primary. The only thing he didn't forecast was him realizing it was rigged in such a way that he would run as an independent. Didn't forecast that part, but forecast that there would be a lot more interest in Kennedy's campaign than the media was giving it credit for, which of course also occurred. We also forecast that the reason why all the attacks on Trump wouldn't work is we were telling folks back when they were saying the economy is fine on CNBC and everywhere else, that there are core issues with the economy, particularly amongst working class voters, especially amongst younger working class voters, and that this was going to be a major drag on the Democratic ticket, while it would be a major boost to Trump, who people can remember very recently having peace abroad and prosperity at home, where the Democrats have brought war abroad and poverty at home. We also forecast all the way back at the beginning of the year. We forecasted back in 2022 that the war in Ukraine would not be a political triumph for the Democratic administration, from Joe Biden or for the West, that it would not sink Vladimir Putin, that he was going nowhere anytime soon, and that would ultimately be a debacle both for Europe and for Biden. And that is precisely what has occurred, as is now being admitted in various Western press institutions. And we forecast specifically not only how Trump would surge, how Trump would survive, that Trump would be in a great position to beat Biden and any other Democrat because of which voters were switching, which was that young working class voters, often women, often in minority groups, the very groups people kept saying Trump couldn't win. That was the group we were talking about at the beginning of the year. You could see, if you dug into the data, that voter group was unhappy with the Democratic Party, unhappy with Joe Biden. Millennials and Zoomers, especially, of those that are the non-college or some college, or if they're going to college, it's community college, it's local college, that they, especially once they were going to be resaddled with college debt again, the ones that have that, which many of them do because they were fed the lie that they were going to get it, go to college and get a great life, and instead all they got was a bad degree and a Starbucks job afterwards, that group, because of all the economic stress on them, because they would realize of the shift on war, that war, which they had always associated, millennials and Zoomers, with the Republican Party, is actually a Democratic Party calling card historically, going back to Bob Dole's great vice presidential debate in 1976. He couldn't count all the dead from the Democrat wars. That would come back into focus, and we could see it in the data. And then when you looked at what was happening to them economically, their housing costs were they could no longer buy a house, period, if you're in that generation. that that their rent cost, the rent in the words of a famous philosopher of a sort, the rent is too damn high, was going to be true for this generation. That in addition, that the jobs that they were getting, that Biden was bragging about, was them getting 2 jobs or other kinds of jobs. It wasn't the good paying work that gave them meaning, which was important to the millennial and Zoomer generations. That their everyday material life and everyday life around them was falling apart.
Sucks. Yeah.
And that they remembered just several years ago when a man named Trump was president, that wasn't happening. Indeed, Trump, as we detailed at the time, only president to see what emerging Republican majority Kevin Phillips is talking about, but all the way through with Boiling Point and Politics of Rich and Poor and his subsequent books, that the only president to start to shift income in America back to the working class, back to the middle class of America, the only one to do it since Nixon was Donald Trump. Not even Reagan achieved that. So economically, he was doing things that nobody had ever done. Internationally, he was doing things that nobody had done in modern era, but it was unappreciated by a young voter group that didn't realize the consequence of it. And then Joe Biden comes along and they witness it in personal terms. And that we were saying, look, and remember all the crap we got? People telling we were idiots, that we're secretly on the Trump payroll. It's like I forget whether I'm supposed to be getting paid by Trump or I'm supposed to be getting paid by the Mossad. It's it depends on what day it is. I'm supposed to be getting when's your Jew check coming in, Barnes? You like your Jew? Just because I don't think it's a bad idea to give Hamas nuclear weapons. So who knew? But yes, well, I mean, we on the economic side, on the foreign policy side, on what was happening in the polling data, on what was happening with these candidates, on how the public was going to react, on how these candidates were going to handle it. We called out the dissent. I mean, I got so much crap. We helped invent the word dissent, helped popularize dissent. But isn't that exactly as people are? And then it was a big grift. So this is
they owe us
big
an
grift.
Apology, Robert. They owe us. Like, they're never going to give it. But those people were the nastiest SOBs alive. And now this is another thing you and I have to take our little victory lap about. Let me pull up the headline. We don't have to go over it, but let me pull up the headline inside the collapse of the Ron DeSantis campaign. Okay, Ron DeSantis wanted to change the way campaigns were funded. Then the fights started. This was published, led to the exit of Jeff Robe, and he says, like a fraud, I can't believe it ended like this. I can't in good conscience still stay a part of this because it's not true. That quote is not true. He's so full of shit. We said to people from the beginning, first of all, what Jeff Rowe really did was wait for a headline. He probably leaked some of it himself or got some people to leak it himself so he could make an excuse, Robert, to bail. All right, he's been bailing water for months. He was the countdown man for months because he was the one that was quoted by the New York Times as saying, we have 60 days to beat Trump and we need $50 million. They blew $100 million to destroy the campaign of the Florida governor, to destroy the image of the Florida governor. But you know what? I'm not like others. I'm not letting him off the hook. He's a grown-ass man. He is in charge of his own life. I remember the phone calls with a friend of mine. Everyone knows who I'm talking about. I don't need to embarrass him any further. And Jeff Rose says, and Jeff Rose right there whispering in his ear, that guy's wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm saying, listen to me, please. He's going to ruin you. You will be ruined forever. They are not reading the room right. Just because Trump is 43% does not mean a majority is done with Donald Trump. That's not how statistics even works, Robert. It's not how it works. And they didn't, sadly, my buddy didn't listen. And now, I'm talking about Steve. All right. We all know who I'm talking about. And I don't care anyway, because he was the head of the communications for this PAC that broke the law. Now Robert, you're the lawyer. Is there, and you know how there's always this these blurred lines when it came to PAC coordination with the campaign? Am I right to say in no interpretation of the law is anything Never Back Down did blurred? Like Casey DeSantis and Ron DeSantis cannot tell the head or anyone at Never Back Down to redirect their ads or do something different. The donors that Laura Loomer caught meeting them in Utah, you can't do that, Robert. So when people blur the lines, it is not this blurred, bro. Am I right or am I wrong to make that?
To give a counterexample, take Robert Kennedy, helped found Children's Health Defense. He's running for office. He's got super PACs as well. He was at the Children's Health Defense annual event in Savannah, Georgia. Beautiful town, by the way.
Oh, Savannah's gorgeous. Yeah.
And he was up there, and towards the end of his presentation, he was going to bridge into, which he legally could have, but it gives you an idea of how you're supposed to behave as a candidate. He was going to bridge into why he was running. And then he realized, he was like, he goes, hold on a second. I don't want to get into any trouble. Well, you guys know what to do. And he got to go off the stage. That was it. Because he was being so careful about marking that line. They've never been careful. Now, we both know that they have 100 ways to get around this kind of stuff. But it just shows who and what the campaign was all about. It was a combination of three people, never Trumpers, the old corporate alliance, the Koch brothers. I guess there's only one left. Rupert Murdoch. This was mostly orchestrated by Paul Ryan, and Fox News. And I mean, who went in and basically gave DeSantis 10 million reasons to run. That being $10 million and dubious book deals.
Let's just call it how it is, brother. Let's just
for a guy who's never been financially independent in his life, but he's always wanted the presidency more than he wanted financial wealth, and that's what he was sacrificing. He took the bait. His wife has been measuring the drapes in the White House since she was 5 years old, and that's why she's saying, "Hey, please bring in the." That's why she goes to Iowa and then tells everybody, "Come to Iowa and do what Bill Clinton accused Barack Obama of," which people always forget. Bill Clinton said that Obama stole Iowa by importing voters from Chicago and other parts of the country. He's like, all these young people aren't really Iowans. This is Brian. And what? Where would Bill Clinton get that idea? Maybe from something Clinton would have done. But what does she do? I mean, she gets up there. She says, "Please come to Iowa. Anybody can caucus." No, anybody can't caucus. But I mean, that's
unbelievable.
Totally desperate they are. Open calls for election fraud.
They say we misinterpreted, Robert. That's
exactly.
Robert. Come on,
right.
bro.
Everybody knows what she was doing.
You can't participate at all. You can't. They're buying tickets. I see people. I screenshotted them. I see them saying, "I'll be there on whatever date. I'm going to be here on this day." You can't go to the caucus. You're not going to be able to be let in. Anyone who's been to an Iowa caucus, you're not media. You're not getting anywhere near that. You have to be a registered voter in the state of Iowa to participate. You can't. They're like, yeah, I'm going to go there and I'm going to change Nikki Haley's voters' minds. No, you're not. And if you get caught in the caucus making a pitch for someone else, you're going to be in deep shit. I don't know what to tell you people. But listen, remember what Cruz did. Don't put anything past him. Not that Trump's not going to win.
Well, people forget how nasty that campaign went. Remember what Cruz did in South Carolina?
Oh,
Trump started to talk about it afterwards, and then he realized, I'm just going to I'm going to allow his bad lie to actually get recirculated by me talking about it. And he figured it out, and so most people have forgotten. Whereas, with what he did in Iowa, Trump hammered him on it for like the
and
next
he was
3
forced
weeks.
to apologize on the debate stage. Robert, remember?
Yep, stole it from old Ben Carson.
Yep.
Cruz, and who ran Cruz's campaign? Same guy running DeSantis's campaign. I mean, Jeff Rowe was neck deep in both of that. Though I'll give Rowe credit. That man has learned to grift like just like he's I'm blanking on Bush's old guy that is still grifting on Fox News and gets the Republican National Committee and
Karl Rove.
I mean, Rowe is the new Karl Rove. And I got to give him credit, too. He knows he's going to get killed. That's why he's jumping ship. He's jumping ship because he's stolen as much money as he can. And now he doesn't want to be on the losing end. He doesn't want to be there if DeSantis comes in third in Iowa and third or fourth in New Hampshire and third or fourth in South Carolina. He doesn't want to be there for that.
No way.
In fact, he wants to say, golly gee, later on, he's going to say, maybe, oh, man, if they would have kept me around, maybe I would have been able to help them finish. It's that routine. But this guy is a pure Washington grifter. You were warning early on. A lot of the people encircling the DeSantis campaign were either never Trumpers, affiliated with the corporate wing of Murdoch and the Koch brothers and the Chamber of Commerce and that crowd and defense industry contractors, or were just pure old-fashioned Republican political class grifters like Roe and the rest. I mean, there are some well-meaning people. I mean, I think Will Chamberlain's well-meaning and he's wrong.
Me too.
But he's not in the grifter class. But a whole bunch of the rest were in the grifter class. And it's like, this is going to be a disaster of a campaign, even if Trump was in trouble, even if DeSantis did have good political instincts, which he clearly proved he did not. I mean, he proved that COVID was a one-off. And you had talked about that before. I mean, and we'd covering his gubernatorial campaign and his congressional history. There wasn't what people were missing was that DeSantis's term as governor was not consistent with his term
at all.
in Congress. In Congress, he was kind of a dope. He was a Paul Ryan acolyte. He was a neocon more often than not. He was affiliated with the corporate wing of the party. Let's cut Social Security and Medicare part of the party. That part. But very much he wanted to be the next Paul Ryan. And he was in deep trouble in the Republican gubernatorial primary. He didn't run a great campaign at all until he got the idea to pretend he loved Trump. Have his kids build little Trump towers and build little Trump signs and
onesies.
And it was smart. He got Trump's attention by doing that. So Trump endorses him. And that's the only reason he won the gubernatorial campaign. That he got to run against Andrew Gillum. And what I think what you've been talking about, and you were talking about it early in 2020, Florida is changing. It's not the swing state it used to be.
No.
That I don't know if you saw this recent data out of Idaho, but I think you were talking about it in 2020 about what exactly is happening in Arizona and where the Democratic votes are coming from, where the Republican votes are coming from. A good number of the people moving into Arizona weren't just Democrats. But like if you look at it, depending on which state it is, you're getting different people moving into different places. Like in Georgia, it was a bunch of Democratic voters moving into the Atlanta area for tech and other reasons. That was changing Georgia's political dynamics. By contrast, like in Idaho, the people that have moved to Idaho since the pandemic, they're all coming from Democratic states, but they're almost all Republicans, which is going to make those states they're leaving more Democratic, of course. But I think if you did I don't know if you've polled this on Florida, but my guess is the people that have been moving to Florida are disproportionately Republican.
Absolutely. And we do first gen, second gen, third gen. And by the way, where'd you come from? Have your family moved in the last whatever? We do that with Arizona, Florida, Nevada, and they come a lot from the Northeast. They come a lot from some of the colder plain states get some too. Definitely the Big Ten, like parts of the Big Ten when they're done and they're just unfreezing, so that they're like, I'm out of here. Illinois is a big one too, but these are Republicans. That's why, Robert, I'm so stunned at the numbers in New York. That's how good people like Gavin Wax and Olson and even Elise Stefanik and her team with Alex DeGrasse, how well they're doing in New York, because they have seized MAGA, booted the establishment that are losers, and they are. I mean, these are total losers that think they're still like George Pataki's the governor or something. These are the worst of the Republican Party have to offer. And it was a bitter fight, but Gavin and a company like booted them. They got a hold of the National Republican Club. I was invited to that shindig, at soiree on the 9th, but I had tickets to my kids to the Nutcracker here in town. I promised them we'd go, so I missed it. But it's probably best for Pulse to have missed that anyway. But I wanted to go and see with my own eyes, because I can see what they're doing there with the non-whites, with the working class, with the younger voters. And by the way, now even Siena College has that a single point race, Robert. It's freaking New York. It's New York, folks. And since all of these Republicans have left New York and to go to states like Florida, like that goes to show you how well they've done up there. And yeah, this isn't, but I gotta, to your point, I gotta bring this up. I don't know how many times I've said on Twitter that these people, some of them were well-meaning and just wrong, and they're just not smart when it comes to politics. And others are lying pieces of trash that know they've been corrected by people on the left, on the right, over and over again. When Steve Kornacki and I are telling them the same thing, and then they keep repeating it. They're liars because it's not hard to check. Gubernatorial vote preference, whether you're reading Kevin Phillips's Emerging Republican Majority or you're reading Ray Texera, who we were just reading his column, The Emerging Democratic Majority, they don't go over gubernatorial votes for vote share, vote preference for a reason. It has no predictive value with the presidential races. It is very different. It is a local election. And they took that election, which was in part a good Republican year cycle that Florida capitalized on. In part, they capitalized on it because of the trends that we have been talking about for years. I mean, Robert, I've been doing this since 2016, trying to explain this to people, that Barack Obama converted the rest of the white Democrat in the South in Florida to Republicans, and the rest are new registrations from the North, from the Midwest, from out in some of the plain states and California where they don't want to, but they're Republican. And while everyone else was still saying, those people are going to come here and turn Florida blue. No, they're not. They're going to make Florida ruby red. And then, by the way, Hispanics, which, remember I was laughed at for saying that Donald Trump was going to be close in Miami-Dade. Now they're all pretending like Ron DeSantis was a god or something because he won Miami-Dade. He won it because Donald Trump brought Venezuelans into the country, because he made the Cuban population loyally Republican again after Mitt Romney and the party of Paul Ryan chased them away to Barack Obama. They split the vote in 2012, folks. I mean, give me a break.
I would say the other component there is that Obama waiting for a second term to cut the deal with Cubans left him in doubt with some older Cubans. And then the pitch was to millennial Cubans that this strategy would work, and it didn't work. It didn't lead to the changes that were expected. And the old Cuban political establishment on the Republican side was very anti-Trump down there. The Diaz Ballarts of the world. Whose sister was married to Fidel Castro, or was the one, way back in the beginning. So I mean, small world sometimes. But ever since really the pandemic and Trump's response to it, in terms of being more hostile to it, helped bring over the Cubans and Venezuelans. But that really started. I mean, we were covering it early on that Trump was making a lot of Mexican American, Cuban American, Puerto Ricans, Venezuelans, others bought in 2016 to the Trump hates you rhetoric. And Trump still made inroads there, but not as much as could be there. Any populist candidate should make inroads into working class Latino, Mexican American, Puerto Rican, Venezuelan, Cuban voters. They're culturally conservative. There's a lot of machismo. I mean, Trump's style looks like a right-wing populist of the Latin American variety.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Even all the way down to the machismo. Just go to cowboy culture in South Texas. I mean those folks. I mean, a buddy of mine who was from Mexican American from the south side of Chicago. Third generation Mexican American, went to Yale. And, he loved his cowboy hat, and he loved on Mexican Independence Day to take his gun and go out and shoot it up in the air. And he's at Yale, so I mean, that gives you an idea for how deep those traditions run. And a great guy. He's now like a Bernie Sanders kind of lefty, but he's the kind of Democrat very unhappy also with Biden. But he's more homeless. He has no place to go. But the younger voters, all that voter, you look at Florida, older voters shifting Republican by generation. And what we were covering, that to the credit of the New York Times actually did cover, Nate Cohn.
They did.
Which was that the other thing we kind of kept trying to tell people is not only is the sort of Romney, Bush, wing of the Republican Party DOA electorally, but the reason it's DOA electorally is the voters that put them in charge. Like, I mean, the DeSantis camp running around saying we're going to bring back Reagan. Well, those voters are literally dead. The voters who voted Reagan in are literally dead. The reason why Democrats thought they had a permanent majority was between immigration and demographic trends amongst Hispanics voters, but was also younger voters were massively Democratic. Trump was making inroads with everybody, every single generation, boomers, Gen X, Zoomers, and millennials, all trended toward Trump between 2016 and 2020. with major inroads amongst African-American men, working class African-American men, especially independent working class African-American men, and Latinos across the board. It didn't matter whether it was Puerto Rican, Venezuelan, Cuban, Mexican-American, everywhere made major inroads in those groups, made inroads amongst working class Asian voters in a range of different places. He made major inroads with younger voters. But what we pointed out early in 2023 is that trend was on fire amongst younger voters. That all his inroads, when you dug into the data, all of Biden's collapse, all the Democratic Party problems that, they barely held on to salvage 2022, minimize their losses in the House, get the Senate, not get hammered, keep key governorships. But they put everything into it. And in early 2023, it was already falling apart and it was no longer there. But the other point we made, one of the 10 big predictions that was accurate, that if you were betting in the sports betting markets, you made a ton of money this year on our predictions, was that Democratic Party is stuck. They cannot leave Joe Biden. And why? Because
where are they going to go, Robert? What are they going to do?
Gavin Newsom is more unpopular, more unlikable. Kamala Harris, more unpopular, more unlikable. Pete Booty Gay, more unpopular, more unlikable. These people are not
Booty Gay.
Oh, you remember he'd get agitated when anybody would mispronounce his boot edge or whatever the heck it was.
Trump,
name,
man,
was
just
okay. I'll come up with a name that's easy to remember. For him. But we were the only people. Remember all the people running around saying Newsom was going to replace him?
No, he's going to crush Trump. Blah, blah. I remember when I first polled it, I'm like, Robert, I sent it to you. I texted it to you. I'm like, look at this. This is a bloodbath. He didn't poll well in the Rust Belt and in the Sun Belts. And it's like, again, somebody asked what the book was behind you. It's the one I just pulled out before. The difference is I have both. I showed you the newer version. This is the OG right here. And Robert's got that behind him as well. And right, that's the book you have, right?
Yeah,
that's what they're talking
Kevin
about.
Phillips, Emerging Republican Majority. I know you're covering it in the book club. It's a thing. I mean, people think it was the 1966 campaign treaties for Richard Nixon's 1968 presidential campaign. He converted it into a book. But for those that don't know, it's way beyond just a historical tool of what happened in 1968, because he goes through the entire electoral political history of every part of America. You find out whether they're German Protestant or German Catholic,
which
is
a big deal. And by the way, in 2020,
Kennedy won because he was Catholic in 1960. That was it. It wasn't all the Camelot, all the other stuff. It was purely Catholics being excited. They had a co-religionist on the ballot, and he didn't lose too many Protestants. But
Larry Sabato is still, it's like he's I've heard him say it in interviews. It's still his family's pride that JFK was elected as, because he was an Italian Catholic, so he was right. Like you said, he was able to run up that's why I love this book. It's so heavy in data like this. He was able to run up the vote in Catholic precincts without losing too many silk stocking Republicans and, or silk stocking Protestants that were leaning Republican anyway. But Democrats had some of that. Even, post, I mean, it's confusing, but like post New Deal, well, it's confusing unless you read it. Post New Deal, a lot of those establishmentarians got on board Roosevelt's New Deal anyway later. And Kennedy's brilliance was that he was able to get the Catholic conservative vote without, and remember, he followed Eisenhower, who won everything. I mean, he was a supreme allied commander. I mean, he
was having to shift in 64 because the Democratic South was going to be gone.
Yeah.
They were trying to figure out ways to jettison LBJ. This is the America's Untold Stories t-shirt of Mark Robert and Eric Hunley. They've covered extensively aspects of what happened clearly with the Kennedy assassination. The echoes of which we're seeing in this presidential campaign. Fear over it occurring to Donald Trump. What happens when they realize Trump is inevitable? That their lawfare won't work in the court of public opinion. May not even work in the court system itself if Supreme Court gets involved in a timely manner, as they should. We'll see if they do, but they should. Then do they escalate? And then, of course, in the independent candidacy of Robert Kennedy, 1963 and 1968 are echoing very loudly. And what's also fascinating about the Emerging Republican Majority book is how much, like, Robert Kennedy believes. I disagree with him on this aspect, but he clearly sees this right now as a lot like 1968. I think he correctly sees Biden as an LBJ type figure. That's definitely right. But I
Yeah.
always said if LBJ had a mentally disabled little brother, it would be Joe Biden. That, think of LBJ but dumber, and that's Joe Biden. And and I think he sees Trump as a George Wallace-like figure. And there's parts of that are apt, parts of that are not, but that's in part because I have a different opinion than the political establishment and Bobby Kennedy on George Wallace. He was a very complicated political figure. Like, one of my favorite questions to, like, liberals on these, or people that like data or history on these kind of topics, is I'll ask them, who was the most racially liberal judge in Alabama in the 1950s? Of course, they'll guess the civil rights judge that later got
Yeah.
active in those people. And I was like, no, according to prominent black lawyers who practiced in front of this judge. And universally, the answer is George Wallace. George Wallace was the most racially liberal judge in Alabama in the 1950s. He blamed him losing the 1958 gubernatorial campaign on that, but he was a Folsomite, which comes from the old populist Democratic tradition in the South, which is a very Jim Folsom was a walking tall. Oh, I mean, he invited Adam Clayton Powell to the State House in Alabama at the peak of the early civil rights controversy. Now, he got caught on TV drinking bourbon during a debate, and he said, "Don't worry, it's just a little bit of Alabama branch water." He had some other habits that they accused him of stealing. He's like, "Yeah, I stole for you." It was that old school tradition that he used to pardon like half the people in prison because he's like, our justice system is so bad in Alabama, half of them probably innocent anyhow. Old school guy, came from Northeast Alabama, the heart of populist hill country there. I grew up right up the road from that area. Chattanooga borders Northeast Alabama. This is where the Fort Payne. This is where the people like the group Alabama. This is where they came from. Was Northeast Alabama. Wallace came from the Black Belt, but he came up as a Folsomite, as a populist. The Chamber of Commerce, when he was in the state legislature, accused him of being a downright commie because he's so pink in his economic views. And then it was George Wallace who built the biracial populist coalition that put people like Hal Heflin in the Senate, kept him there for a long time, helped put Shelby there initially before he flipped him in a Republican. So he could stay in the Senate, old Shelby. All he cared about was the defense contractor cash. But Heflin was more of the populist type. Hugo Black, in the Supreme Court, was an old school populist type. Wallace stayed populist on economics his entire life. And the thing is, in 1968, what Wallace ran on was no longer race. This is like your liberal historian types, your C. Van Woodwards of the world. They want to take George Wallace and stick him in that schoolhouse door forever. The thing is, what they don't realize is Wallace ran on race from like 1959 to 1966. And once civil rights passed, he was done with it. He moved on. It's George Wallace and his wife, who was also governor for a period of time, who presided over the first racially integrated inaugural ball in Alabama. I mean, it's George Wallace who builds the biracial populist coalition built on black votes between 1978 and 1986. By 1968, you watch Wallace's campaigns. He's not talking about race. Wallace is talking about Wallace is the one who introduces cultural populism. Wallace is the one in the modern politics. Wallace is the one who introduces opposition to the administrative state. He's the one talking about people in their ivory towers. People of the making fun of the professional managerial class. Saying that it's all these NGOs and various foundations combined with all these administrative regulators. He sounds just like Huey Long in the 1930s when he's talking about this. Huey Long's like, the New Deal. He has the great one, the low Papa Hiram, high Papa Lower example. But beyond that, he said, the New Deal, he goes, they got ABC agency to figure out how fat your chickens can be. And they got XYZ agency to figure out how skinny your pigs got to be. He was an anti-New Deal, that populist tradition. And that's what Wallace was running. He was running on cultural issues. Go watch a Wallace speech. 90% of it's cultural issues. Like it's against the hippie class.
Yeah.
He's like, I got
yeah.
a couple of 4-letter words for you: WORK and SOAP. That's what he's running on.
That's what. That's a great thing
you lay
about
down
Phillips.
in front of my car, like we're seeing these days, when people get in front of cars again, 1968 protest style. He's like, it'll be the last car you lay down in front of.
I dare you.
That was the wall, and that's what Kennedy quite kind of does. He thinks this is like 1968 all over again. It's like there's aspects of it, but it's in large part because so many people misunderstood Wallace. Even Phillips did. Phillips thought a lot of it was race.
I was just going to say that.
He was completely confused in 1972 when about anywhere from a third to half of Wallace's voters voted for McGovern. And he was in places like Middle Tennessee. He's like, huh? Because they're cultural people. That's why they were voting for Wallace. He was a cultural populist. He was the guy talking about against the, and it's his foreign policy is your classic foreign policy Trumpish kind of position. Either go in hard or don't go in at all. Right?
That's why I loved
people forget about the latter part, because Wallace often said, we either go full throttle or we get out entirely. They forget he said the latter.
Which will be basically all pre-Bush Republican sentiment for years. And I like what Phillips did make it a lot about race, but at least he started the conversation being beyond
from
race.
New York City,
yeah,
everything kind of is race. The blacks don't trust the Jews. The Puerto Ricans don't trust the blacks or the Jews. The Italians don't trust the Irish. The Irish don't trust,
the Jews weren't like terribly
New York City politics.
They weren't. He was right. He didn't include them in a lot of that conservative camp. They had a lot of left-wing crazy groups they supported, left-wing parties they supported. But he did bring up how, that 30-year changing cycle, that realignment. And if you go back to like the New York City mayor, talking about the Civil War, how these ethnic groups used to buy that stuff, right? So when Wallace comes around, of course, it's years later to us in our minds, but Phillips is right about how these ancestral patterns work. You would be stunned when the New York City mayor is like, I don't think the Civil War was worth it. Like, we have enough oppressors here at home. I mean, no one's helping my Irish ass. No one's, I don't need to go and fight my brothers in the South, when I have problems right here at home. That's crazy to think the mayor of New York would have said that back then. But
Irish
that's the way it was.
Riots, right? That back when you had real riots, right? They'd be back when the city had to pay you for all your
the rabbits. What were they?
They would go find the actual rich people. They didn't rip apart the poor part of the country. At least the Irish and the Italians knew how to do it. When they would do those draft riots in the 1860s during the Civil War, they went right up to the rich people's homes, broke in, stole as much stuff as they could, and trashed as much as they could, because that's who they blamed. Look at we were watching on the board the Viva Barnes Law.locals.com board. The It's a Wonderful Life. This past, and that is such a great movie of true Americana.
Absolutely,
Capra was so deeply, I was watching so many parts of that would be politically incorrect. I'm surprised they haven't gone back in and edited them out yet in Hollywood. You know what I mean? I mean, they're smacking girls on the rear. I mean, things like to be, oh my goodness, oh my, you can't do that. But the prayer. Remember that movie starts with everybody getting in the community praying for somebody. Yep. It's like, you couldn't do that in Hollywood today.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you this, because I do think the 92 era, was like, you said last night, you said the liberal order ended in 92 was NAFTA, specifically the line. I mean, you gotta take
the different things. One is the Cold, what ended was the Cold War era. So really in 89, but full throttle by 92. Because what the establishment and the deep state was able to do was convert Americans' historic skepticism of foreign entanglement into anti-communism. And by getting it into anti-communism, they sold them on foreign intervention.
Yeah.
And so it was a brilliant move by the deep state apparatus. I mean, politically. They both demonized the John Birch Society and anybody affiliated with it. William F. Buckley helped lead that. Buckley was neck deep. Not only did he go to Yale with that crowd, was in Skull and Bones with that crowd, but he was neck deep with the deep state apparatus. I mean, he's the godfather to some of the people connected to or part of the Watergate operation, who are deep state guys. But what it did is, and I remember telling people in 92, as soon as actually really the wall fell. But by 92, it was clear. People forget, even when the wall fell.
The
And
end
so
of history.
a lot of people during that time period were still unsure, like particularly on the conservative side. Like, is communism really dead? Or is this something, people wanted to see it actually happen for several years. But by 92, it was clear. And then we'd gone into Panama under Poppy Bush. We'd gone into Iraq under Poppy Bush. And I was predicting that we were going to see a return to the populist right opposition to war. Because the other thing that happened, he talks about in 1968, Hunter Thompson, other people talk about it. The anti-war cause in America historically is a deeply populist tradition. It got derailed by the anti-war left of the late 1960s. A lot of whom were communist, a lot of whom were communist affiliates, communist sympathy, communist attendant, if you will. The hippies made it their cause. And what that did is it converted Americans who are deeply anti-war into being anti-war protesters.
Yeah.
Right. This is why the famous Hard Hat riot, where they go and beat up the war protesters and this anti-war protesters. This shocks some people in the kind of new left, the New Criterion, those old new left publications. This is before Horowitz is converted. People forget Horowitz used to be a huge new lefty. Then he has friends killed by the Black Panthers in San Francisco and sets him on his path, his right-leaning path thereafter. But when I say it ended in 92, that whole order, that deep state establishment was able to maintain and sustain power despite assassinating President Kennedy, assassinating Robert Kennedy, assassinating Martin Luther King, being complicit at least in assassinating Malcolm X.
I was going to say, come on, don't forget Malcolm X in there.
No doubt. They killed 4 guys in 5 years.
They did Malcolm X in by they had all those people on the payroll of the Nation of Islam. They nudged them. And by the way, let me just say this because I keep throwing bombs with this, but it's true. What they did to the Nation of Islam to get them to kill Malcolm X is what they're doing to their viewers on MSNBC. And no doubt what the FBI is doing behind the scenes, Robert, to prod somebody to take a shot at Donald Trump. This is the model. Folks, they don't have some guy who's been dark ops, black ops his entire life, taking an M23 or something and pop somebody off of a rooftop like that. They get these people who are handlers to do it. And they get their handlers to force people to do it.
It's much like we described what happened in 2020 in terms of the fraud, for which we also took a lot of heat.
It's a great example.
We took a lot of heat on both sides at the time, and now almost everything we explained at the time has been proven true. Not only that the election was stolen, it was election fornication. The election fortification was election fornication. Done proper, if you will. But also that we said Dominion was a red herring that would lead people down a wrong path, that would get people destroyed politically and otherwise, which has also happened. Both of those events happened. And those things have been confirmed. But effectively, with the Cold War over, American historically, going back to we don't go searching abroad for monsters to destroy, America's populist and deeply American tradition of being non-interventionist, of staying out of foreign wars, of not having military bases. And where was it? Like 400 countries? 400 bases in like 80 countries currently?
Yeah, it's crazy,
It's some ridiculous number. It's worse than the Romans during the peak of the Roman Empire. That was not an American tradition, not a populist tradition, not a conservative tradition, until they successfully converted anti-intervention people and anti-war people into anti-communist people. But when communism was no longer a meaningful threat by 1992, I was telling people you're going to see a resurgence of old school anti-war sentiment, old school populist sentiment, old school non-interventionist sentiment, old school opposition to the military-industrial complex, standing armies. I mean, that was a deeply American populist tradition. The Second Amendment is about empowering people, not having a standing army, and instead having a militia of ordinary individuals with the power of the state in their hands. True democratization of the power of the state. It goes beyond self-defense, in my view. It was about making the state dependent on the individual cooperation for it being able to even to enforce its rules and laws. That was the brilliance and genius of that by its origin. much as the jury trial was meant to do so in the civil and criminal context in its own way as to individual justice. But the net is that with that return of populism, and we saw it, 1992, 2 campaigns. First, the primary campaign of Pat Buchanan. Here is one of the biggest Cold War warriors of all time, who all of a sudden reverted right back to his old Catholic, Irish, immigrant, anti-war, anti-intervention sentiments. And he surges in the Republican Party. At the same time, Ross Perot emerges. And Perot, he represented a lot of conflicting policies that reflected different constituencies. But the urge to Perot was a underlying feeling that this Cold War order had not worked for the American people.
Yeah.
From 1973 to 1992, real wages for working class people had just been on a steady decline in real terms. Real incomes had been on a steady decline. Their income share had been on an income. That's why Kevin Phillips is what books is he writing in the late 80s, early 90s? Politics of Rich and Poor, Boiling Point, Arrogant Capital, those books, because he's talking about how the working class heart of the country is being eaten out. That this is the time period, NAFTA and China would facilitate it into the 2000s. First, with NAFTA symbolizing the issue in America, but then the China deal really doing the economic damage in the WTO in 2000, done by a combination of Bush and Clinton. But the net effect was people started realizing in 92, our politics is broken. Our parties are broken. And what happened is they temporarily had Perot as a solution. They threatened Perot. He backed out. Then he got back in, wasn't able to surge to victory. But Perot was assigned to a relatively young businessman in New York who, when he was watching it, thought, I could have been Ross Perot. I could have done that.
Yep.
And I would have won. And his name was Donald John Trump.
Donald Trump. Yep. Yeah, and here we are now. It's an interesting history you took us through, man. It really is. Just to give people, because I see a lot of the questions. It's rolling on the bottom. We just haven't released it yet. That's not true. We gave it to locals, but we give it to locals because we know locals knows how to read a crosstab and understands, Robert, that there may be modest weights. Like, here's the funny thing with this poll. I want your take on this, because we also said in that video that I led the show with that they were going to lose Iowa. Team DeSantis was going to lose Iowa, and they were going to lose the rest of the states trying to win Iowa. And we talked about cultural evangelicals that are very different. Iowa is not the Iowa of 2000. It's not the Iowa of 08 when Huckabee won it. It's not the Iowa of 12 when Rick Santorum barely eked it out. And it's sure as hell not the Iowa of Ted Cruz when he was running against a billionaire from Manhattan, Queens, who had spoke nice things about Planned Parenthood at one time, so they didn't know where he stood on stuff, so basically they got hit with a left hook. And that Des Moines Register poll had the ideology spectrum thing. Who's just about right? Who's too conservative? Who's too moderate? Haley came out too moderate. DeSantis came out too conservative. Trump came out just right. And he's done after Iowa. There's no path after. There wasn't a path even if DeSantis somehow pulled off a miracle and won Iowa because he killed himself in New Hampshire.
Yeah, he's going to get killed in Iowa. What's the risk? Because I've been trying to assess it for betting market purposes. What's the risk he even finishes third?
Listen, this is a big risk because all of Trump's voters are locked in, 70%, right? DeSantis and Haley, their voters are like, in our poll, was like DeSantis was 3 and 10 locked in. Haley was 2 and 10 locked in. The problem DeSantis has, and we're seeing it in this new poll. I'm just going to tell everybody I haven't been exactly secretive about this. DeSantis is in third place in our new national poll. All right. And it's not like he's behind her in evangelicals now. What's happening is some people who were with DeSantis, a lot now. He always had the potential risk that he would bottom out and Haley would surpass him because Haley has the never Trump lane. DeSantis's lane was still a MAGA lane with a little bit of never Trump in it. What's left with him now, man, is like a lot more never Trump than MAGA has gone back to Trump. So if you look at evangelicals, Robert, Trump is winning evangelicals 64% to 11%. And that's Haley. DeSantis is now at 9. So he lost another, 6 points since last month among evangelicals. When we did Iowa, people were just, and by the way, we came out before the Des Moines Register poll showing Trump above 50. It's like, everyone's like, Seltzer poll, the Seltzer poll. Your poll is fake because of the Seltzer poll. And then she comes out, it's identical to ours. And Bob Vander Splat Your Pants said, the Des Moines poll's fake. I mean, Bob, give it a rest, Bob. You don't even know your own people anymore. You are totally out of touch.
He reminds me of those pastors I grew up with as a kid.
Yes, those guys
who couldn't wait for the bigger church. Right?
Yep.
They're all about the message and God's will and just carrying the Bible and preaching things. And I'd watch them manipulate vulnerable people in the audience just to have them come forward, and the old Baptist tradition, in ways to make them frankly look good, because they're that kind of pastor. And I was like, yeah, God's always in the bigger church, isn't he? With these pastors, this church, it's like for whatever reason, the missionary.
God's always in the bigger churches.
Yeah, oh, it is. Yeah, it's like wherever the bigger offering plate is somehow where God is, according to these pastors.
Yeah.
Well, I guess so. Vanderplatz is the same way. I mean, God exposed, shaking down the DeSantis campaign for 6 figures in cash.
Again,
like, imagine people thinking this guy had anything to do with it. Little secret to Iowa, historically on the Republican caucus side, the church-going evangelicals way outvote everybody else. So the polls underestimate what's going to happen because they get the wrong percentage of church-going evangelicals who show up.
Yes.
Vanderplatz is one of these church-going evangelicals. He's been falsely taking credit for that phenomenon, as if he organized it, as if he instituted it. The guy's on the back of the train, not the front of the train. And in fact, if you tracked him politically, you would figure that out. Often that's what he's trying to do. But he used it to create this perception that he had this secret mojo so he could shake down presidential campaigns for fat cash. Yeah. That's what this deep, great religious leader of religious principle is. I mean, I say this as someone who grew up in the evangelical South. So I've dealt with so many of these fake preachers and fake, my best version of it is Arsenio Hall in Coming to America doing the black preacher version of it. He goes, if you really love Jesus, I should be driving a Rolls Royce.
Dude, do you remember?
There you go. That's Bob Vanderplatz in a nutshell.
Oh my God, how could I forget this? Do you remember Steve something? He was a comedian and he did it's not keeping the faith. Oh, come on, Steve Martin. But he's really total huckster, and he has all these scams about how he heals people, and he's got the cross that burns and shoots smoke. He's got all this crap. Dude. I'm telling you,
South Park did it. They had Cartman become a preacher, right? And then they find him rolling around in the cash at the end.
Oh my God,
that's who Vanderplatz is. If you want to see, by the way, a movie that really celebrates the best of the apostle tradition and some of these people are just human.
Sure.
Watch The Apostle, Robert Duvall.
Oh,
wonderful,
yes, absolutely.
Wonderful film.
Oh, yeah.
Just so people don't get confused, I'm not anti-evangelical. I'm anti these fake hypocrites, so-called preachers who aren't preaching the Bible. They're preaching their wallet.
Let me take a quick.
Vanderplatz, how embarrassed is he going to be when he gets exposed on the caucus night? Because 2 things are happening. One, those he doesn't control those church-going evangelicals. He was just figuring out which way they were going to vote, supported that candidate towards the end, then took credit for what happened. So that's part one. And that church-going evangelical crowd is overwhelmingly Trump. But the second part is what you've noted. The church-going evangelical share will not be anywhere near as dominant in the Iowa caucuses this time as it was back in 2016, 2012, 2008. So on and so, a lot of them are going to be cultural evangelicals, which have always been Trumpish voters. But Trump's bringing in all kinds of, he's bringing in people who likely caucused with the Democrats in 2008. So that's the shift that's occurring, and nobody's noticing it, and they won't realize it until election night.
And saw it this time.
Man, Steve, how bad is Steve Deace is from Iowa? How bad is he going to look when Trump goes in there and just smacks his boy around left and right? What will Steve Deace do if DeSantis finishes third? Steve Deace likes to bet. Somebody put out a bet. What was it? Was it that DeSantis would beat Trump in Iowa? I think it was somebody big that put so, and I said, I'll bet you. And somebody's like, well, I'll give you. I was like, I'm so nice, I'll give you even money. I was like, yeah, that'd be stealing candy from a baby. I mean,
Robert,
that's like betting people that ride the short bus to school.
if he beats Donald Trump in Iowa and there's a 35 to 40 point miss in the state of Iowa, then they totally rigged the caucus system. And by the way, I've seen Republicans and Democrats play shenanigans with it. They robbed Bernie last time. But speaking of failed faith leaders, I want to show you something. Just give me 2 seconds.
What you have to bring in a laptop database system that just magically crashes. Oh,
yeah, that's what you remember that?
Crashed. Oh, we're sorry about this.
And totally misallocated the state delegate equivalents to Pete Buttigieg. Oh my God, they robbed Bernie blind.
In 2016, now Hillary magically.
Oh
of course, she won every coin flip. It didn't matter which way they
every coin flip.
Hillary. They want to live. They want to live till tomorrow. As Martin Luther King said, longevity has its purpose.
That was a hell of a coin they had, bro. They got one of those trick coins. Let me take a real quick break, and then when we come back, I want to show you something from the Christmas poll because it goes to exactly what we've been saying. We've been saying this for years, but give me 2 seconds, and we'll come back real quick. All right? This is something you're going to love this, Robert. I mean, you probably heard about it before, but I introduced these guys to the wellness company and the medical emergency kit a couple of weeks ago. I got one. I hope you got one as well. It's still there. And this product is another great one. I genuinely believe every American should be taking this regularly or at least have it on hand for when it's necessary or a loved one needs it. It's called Spike Support. Listen up. If you're not thinking that something is up at this point, but so many previously healthy people experiencing myocarditis, blood clots, turbo cancers, menstrual irregularities, miscarriages, and the new died suddenly phenomena, you're not paying attention. The culprit is the protein. It's lingering threat from both the you-know-what and the man-made you-know-what, linked to all kinds of long-term health issues. Even Big Pharma's admitting that there are problems now. So many people, myself included, looking for answers and ways to stay healthy despite the spike, and that are being part of the population now. And while we know those answers will never come from the mainstream sources, truth-seeking doctors like Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and their team at the Wellness Company have emerged to provide answers and hope. There's one question that these doctors are asked every single day. How do I detox from the spike that's left behind? And thanks to the Wellness Company, there's actually something we can do. Spike Support. It's a unique blend of natural ingredients that aim to block and dissolve the spike in your body so you can get back to that pre-you-know-what feeling and stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Website has tons of testimonials, folks, from Spike Support customers reporting that they increased mental clarity, energy levels, and a slew of other things, whether they got the you-know-what or not. Reclaim your health at twc.health/TPP. Use the code TPP for 10% at checkout. That's the same site where you can get the medical emergency kit, twc.health/TPP. And by the way, I just got one before, Robert. I just got it before, brother. I'll tell you right now. I got family members who were asking me, what do I do? I screwed up. I listened. I got the first one. I got issues, and also the medical emergency kit. I don't know how you don't get it. It's ivermectin, the Z-Pack, amoxicillin, a ton of other stuff, plus your little pocket doctor. How do you not have that? Remember COVID when all the supplies shortages happened? The Chinese stuck it to us. No more antibiotics for you. No more Z-Packs for you. That's another reason why under another Trump administration, that stuff's going to get cleared up. I know because I've been, talking to some people who are, this time put in place, ready to go. And they're not going to, that's going to be a top priority, dealing with the pharmaceutical and really healthcare supply chain issues that we're suffering under because, we have so much integration and dependence on China to get these products when we need them. And that's just that's total stupidity. But let me bring it back because this is stuff. I mean, we're coming into Christmas time. This is stuff you and I have been talking about for so long. I enter the Christmas poll. And last year we had asked people, do you celebrate Christmas? It was down a lot and people were hurting and they were upset. And I imagine that had a lot to do with it. We also asked what was your favorite version of the Christmas Carol. Remember that? And the Muppets was like way higher than we thought. And you were like, of course, bro, it's the Muppets. Remember that? And I'm like, what? I couldn't believe it. But this year we did a lot of stuff like Gallup used to do. And in order to do it, we just had to ask flat out first, do you celebrate Christmas or not? and it's way up again. And I'm stunned because we know 45% tops tell us that they're Protestant or other Christian. Another 23% will say they're Catholic. Everybody else is Jewish, another religion, Muslim, something like that. And there's this growing share of like 25%, depending on the poll, that say that they're nothing. They have no religious affiliation. Yet we found this still. So talk about the failures of the leader like Bob Vander Splats in your pants and the rest of these people. It's like Jimmy. You're old like me, brother. So I remember Jimmy Swaggart. I remember the Catholic Church and the diocese, covering up from their disgusting priests touching little boys in genitalia. Like this stuff hurt the church. It hurt attendance. It hurt faith in the church. And then you add headlines like Bob Vanderplat's accused of taking a bribe for an endorsement again, because Rick Santorum was accused of bribing Bob Vanderplat's too. This isn't the first time. And it just hurts, man. It hurts the church. And I'm not talking about the church. I'm talking about the church. It hurts. Look at this. This is unweighted, but I'm going to show it to you because it's really going to be close anyway. Oh, and that's what I was going to ask you. Don't let me forget. Everything it's a huge sample. Everything was so representative, except ideology was a little low to me. And conservative was a little low, moderate was a little high. Maybe there's just going to be less conservatives, and Trump does better with these moderates than Republicans do, even though they're not anti-religion, Robert.
Your new working class independent voter will describe himself as a moderate.
That's what I'm saying. This is a big
confused pollsters in 2016 how he did really well amongst moderates in the North, and it's like, yes, but that's because that's your working class non-observant Catholic who goes to mass, on Easter and Christmas, and when their kid is born. That kid to get baptized, that kind of thing, right? But and a lot of them are skeptical of the church, right? There are people that had negative experience with the church as an institution. That they still share the same religious beliefs as they always did. That's what we mean by cultural evangelicals. You could probably extend that to cultural Catholics. Was it half of Catholics almost rarely attend mass?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, that group will call themselves moderate often in the North because they mean I'm not a religious church-going conservative. It's amongst some of that group that, doesn't want to be preached at. They don't want the boss man to run their life. They don't want the government to run their life. They don't want preachers to run their life. They don't want wokesters to run their life. And so I do think this Iowa caucus electorate. The other thing, by the way, that used to happen is you mostly had Republicans that people didn't know that well running in the caucuses. They weren't established figures. And consequently, the other reason the church-going evangelical crowd had a big edge was they often, made their decision, a lot of their leaders, the Sunday before Election Day, caucus day. And that was that Sunday church service where they would rally and pick a candidate. There's no preacher with an IQ over 50 in Iowa that's going to be telling people to vote anyway but Trump. They're not getting in front of the Trump train. They're not ruining their credibility. They're not, even if they're church preachers on the take, they know they would be exposed for being on the take.
Well, Vanderplatz has got, DeSantis has Vanderplatz, but there's like 170 something other pastors that have endorsed Trump. They act like Vanderplatz is like the godfather of the evangelical church or something like that. It's what you have said for years. He was just good at sticking his finger in the air to see what damn way the wind was blowing. He wasn't like some friggin' Nostradamus of the evangelical, church, Robert. It's nuts. That's nuts,
Well, exactly. And because of that, it's two questions as we predict what's going to happen in the new year, starting with the Iowa caucuses. What we agree, there's pretty much no chance. I give Trump 99.9% chance of winning the Iowa caucus.
Nobody's had a lead ever this big, Robert. Nobody.
And if you know the underlying demographics and why that's occurring, who's going to vote, et cetera. Then you look at this. So to me, the only question is, what's the chance DeSantis gets beat by Haley in Iowa? What's the risk that happens to him, that he finishes third? And then the odds right now are 2-1 for DeSantis, in favor of DeSantis finishing second. The question is, originally I was going to bet DeSantis to finish second, but he's falling apart so badly.
Yeah, it's quick.
I'm not sure where those odds should be. And then the other part is, if DeSantis finishes third, is this the end of Vanderplatz and all the grifters in Iowa?
Is
that have
that
been
the
grifting
end of
off the
Vander
caucus for
Splat your
forever?
pants? Is that the end of Bob Vander Splat your pants? Uh-oh. Sorry.
Exactly. Well, so what do you think? Yeah, I agree that Vanderplatz will be badly damaged no matter what happens. But if DeSantis finishes third, he's done. Nobody's going to take him seriously again as some kingmaker in Iowa. Steve Deace is going to look like an idiot. He's going to have to try to rebuild his own reputation independently. But he won't be as damaged as Vanderplatz will be. So the other question becomes, what do you think the odds are or should be of DeSantis finishing second versus Haley in Iowa?
Well, listen, I'll go over this in a second, but that's a great question. So the Iowa poll that was just released by CBS, and I think CBS is off on both Iowa and New Hampshire. They have Trump at 58, DeSantis at 22, Haley at 13, Ramaswamy at 4. Us and the Des Moines Register were just a few points away from each other with DeSantis and Haley. They had DeSantis at 19, Haley at 16. And then you had the Iowa State University poll, which I've been trying to explain to everybody, is actually more accurate than the Des Moines poll. It has been in the recent memory. Since her 08 Obama miracle, she's actually herded to us every year. So I don't know what everyone's talking about with this gold standard nonsense. She's been around longer, but Iowa State has done better than her. Go look at it in 2020. The only reason why the averages were close was because of Iowa State. They spiked their final poll because they buckled to political pressure and media pressure, which anytime a pollster does that should make you sick and should turn you off from them permanently. I think that the potential, if there's a collapse like CBS shows, I actually don't think it would be a collapse for Haley the way they're showing it. I think it's going to be a collapse on the part of DeSantis, because most of DeSantis's second choice people are Trumpers, and Haley's second choice people are a range of others, not Donald Trump. So her support could technically be firmer because people could get to the caucus and the caucus captains could go. And let me just pull this down real quick so you and I could talk about this. But the way how caucuses go, but maybe viewers don't think about it, Robert.
Oh yeah, it's a good reminder of that.
Trump
do they
has
still have the
organization
same
this time.
15% rule in Iowa?
Yeah, well, yeah. There's no. Democrats have a threshold. Republicans have true proportionality. But what could happen is Trump's people get there, and DeSantis's infrastructure, his organization, is being totally overstated. Never Back Down was supposed to handle that. Part of the fighting is that they spent so much money on other stuff. Jeff Rowe pocketed, like he did to Adam Laxalt in Nevada, which is why Laxalt lost. Jeff Rowe pocketed that shit, and he gave it to his friends and himself.
Oh, Rowe was
what the Washington Post story is about.
Laxalt ran such a crap campaign.
Jeff Rowe. They're being sued. Jeff Rowe, they're being sued right now because the walkers were at Caesar's Palace gambling instead of doing the actual walks that they told the walk book they were doing. It was a total scam. I mean, this is something people need.
Those people know Vegas. That's a Vegas tradition. We'll go walking, all right. We'll walk around the roulette wheel. We'll walk around the blackjack table.
They could get to that caucus. Trump's captains.
Like that Jason Miller. He goes to Vegas, Mr. Married. Banging a staffer at the time, knocking up.
And now
woman.
She's accusing him of rape because she's a Ron DeSantis supporter.
And now he's and then he goes to the strip clubs in Vegas. I know he's high up still in the Trump campaign. Oh, God bless that. That guy's as dim comes.
He's always been good. He's always been nice to me, dude. But it's like that stuff.
Yeah, it's a bit nice. I think he blocked me after I kind of ragged on him for
way too long.
Look. I don't care. You have bad values. Okay, that's whatever.
Just
that's
be careful you don't hurt the candidate.
Don't be stupid. You know, it's like I said, it's okay to be a criminal. It's okay to be stupid. Don't be both.
Right. So, basically, what I'm seeing could happen here, Robert, is they get to that caucus. The Trump people look at the people who committed to caucusing for DeSantis. I'm not talking about the captains and their loyal people. I'm talking about people who said that DeSantis is their first choice. Okay, I commit, but then Trump is my second. They're going to get to that caucus, and people are going to say, "Look at the polls. Trump is romping right now. You're voting voting for a loser, and Haley's campaign is going to make the case that DeSantis has nowhere to go after Iowa. You're throwing away your vote, and people are going to go, the hell with it. Trump is the only one who's going to take this whole thing. I've spoken to these voters in Iowa now, 4 or 5 times this season. I'm telling you, that has been a long time theme with DeSantis' voters. Most of them still love Donald Trump. And it's just that they were thinking maybe it's time for something new. And several bought the early argument, which crumbled now, but some of them are still holding on to this ridiculous belief because it was propaganda. It wasn't real. That DeSantis has a better chance of beating Biden than Trump does. That has crumbled, and a lot of people now are going to go to that caucus knowing that's not true. And it could be that DeSantis falls to like 15 or 17, 18, like we have him, and like the range that the Des Moines poll, us and Iowa State have him, and then Haley gets the rest of his never Trumpers. You know what I'm saying? Like, so his never Trumpers are like, Haley's got the only lane forward, I'm going with her. Then many Trump voters are gone. Trump's got the only lane, I'm going with him. And DeSantis is just left holding his tiny little, you know what, with his thumb up his ass. That's all that could happen. And it's a real risk. And I think that's why you're finally seeing other people bail out like Jeff Rowe. I'm telling you, look, let me just show you right now. I mean, I'll show you, man. She is beating him nationally with evangelicals right now. This has really been, my locals people would, they haven't, we're looking at it. Oh my God, this is so bad. It is. It's that bad. Well, I won't pull the other thing down. I'll just give it to you. Just so everyone knows, Trump nationally has a 50+ lead with evangelicals, 50+ point lead. He's beating, he's got 64%. And then, by the way, he's got 66% of Protestants and other Christians who say, I have no opinion on whether I'm an evangelical. A lot of evangelicals, ironically, will do that, especially cultural ones that Robert and I were just talking about. They don't admit it.
Do you think you're asking me whether or not I'm deeply religious, or are you asking me whether I'm like that freak down the street?
That's totally true. It's exactly right. And do I knock on people's doors and like do the Jehovah's Witness
right
thing,
exactly? Does evangelical mean I'm out preaching to because there's a lot of people have deep evangelical beliefs, but they're not people. They don't like people being preached at, and they don't like preaching at people.
But they're non-denominational. They love the praise and worship. They may even watch it at home. They certainly know Sunday is the day, like that's it. And maybe they like us. We don't have a home right now for church, so we don't always go just to bounce around. We'll do our own thing, or we'll do something. We know it's that day. I miss my church in Florida. I can't replace it. It sucks. It's hard. I love my, so I watch my pastor on TV. You know what I mean? Like that's what I do. Haley, among those who said they were evangelical, Haley has 2 points more than DeSantis, 2.2 actually now. Among those who are not, Haley has 0.8% more support. And then among those who have no opinion, they go to DeSantis. So maybe he's got a little bit more than it looks like. They don't go to DeSantis. She gets almost none. He gets about 10. And Trump gets 67 or something, 66. So, I mean, if you guys look at the demos that are scrolling at the bottom of the screen, Trump is now winning with every ideology across the board. Liberals who are eligible for the Republican primary, 52%. Moderates, 54%. Conservatives, he's now taking 70% of conservatives. You can't win a nomination against a guy who's doing that. All educational groups, he is now at 70%, Robert, with the ever expanding group of people who have some college or a 2-year degree.
And we were predicting that early on. We're pointing out that Trump, that there was no, amongst the populist part of the base, and among which you could find demographically in the not having 4-year college degrees or post-college degree, which was now the base. Like
winning with them too.
This is now the Republican base. Like if you go back to 08, you're equal to your college educated and up vote was a majority of the Republican vote in a lot of primaries. It no longer is. It's now a minority.
I don't get that, man.
I mean, so the working class now is the majority of the Republican vote everywhere. And Trump had always had a lock on that vote when he dug into the data.
Totally.
That's it. The two things that are going to be different is church-going evangelicals are not going to be 60, 65% of the Iowa caucuses, in my opinion. And number two,
No, I think you're right. I think
the
you're right.
college
Yeah.
post-college share is going to be the or what you could loosely call the upper middle class share. You have to change educationally in the past because the upper middle class used to be just a college degree. Now it's master's and post-college degrees, right? I mean, if we were doing 1968, it would be people that had any college were often upper middle class.
Yeah.
So it varies by group. Democrats always make the mistake of thinking if education changes, that the voting changes. No, it's just the working class keeps getting more educated. Hasn't helped them at all, economically. But I was in Nevada. Remember when Trump was like, "Don't we love the poorly educated? I love the poorly educated."
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. And they tried to
he
make
loved
that a
all the
headline.
votes he was getting from working class voters, but he just put it in the classic Trump, just whatever came out.
They tried to make that a headline too, Robert, and people were like, "Whatever, are you kidding me?" That's
I've never
great.
seen a guy make Steve Wynn and Sheldon Adelson look like midgets
Yeah.
until Trump.
Yeah.
Trump carried himself like Clinton carried himself in an
What a
impressive
great
way if you were
example.
around him in the 90s. But nowhere close, but even Clinton, nowhere near Trump. Trump walks in and he's the alpha gorilla in the room. Everybody
totally.
knows, owns
Totally.
it. I thought he must be like 6'5". Because I was like, he feels
Just the way
so,
he walks,
you can
it's
feel
just-
the energy, you
Yeah.
can feel the power, big cucumber energy, whatever you want to call it. Trump has got it in spades.
As my daughter says, Robert, all the kids, I guess, say now, Trump's got W Riz. That's what I don't know what the hell that means.
What is that called?
W Riz. It means you got swagger, you're smooth, you know what I mean? Like you got game, and it's like when you got the it and girls, of course, like that, you got W Riz. That's what she calls it.
W Riz.
Let's look at this real quick. And I do, guys, we'll get to some of your questions. We're running a little close. So I want to show Robert this. And I want to show you guys this too, but I want to get Robert's reaction. Despite all of the running away from the church, Robert, for the reasons we've been talking about, over 91%, over 90% of Americans, and it may go up a little bit with weights, probably not though, maybe 92, 93. But do you celebrate Christmas? More than 9 in 10 Americans do. Only less than 9% do not. And when we go down, we ask them, do you or your family do the following to celebrate Christmas? Among those who said yes, right? Put up a Christmas tree, 86%. And this is registered voters. It's not an adult sample, but it's still registered voters. 86% of registered voters put up decorations other than a Christmas tree. Get this, even though so many people say that they don't have a religion, 56% put up religious decorations such as a nativity, getting together with family or friends. Basically, everybody does that. 90%. Attend religious services on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. They're split at 47, Robert, even though, and keep this in mind, exchange gifts, 92. But reflect on or celebrate the birth of Christ is more than a super majority. And that's crazy to me, considering people don't go to that. Not that many people go to church. Not that many people put up religious things. Less actually go to Christmas parties, but pretty close, 65.7. And 43 attend a concert, a Christmas concert, or a play. But now get this. Do you prefer a real or artificial tree? That's funny. Get this, though. Thinking of the way that you personally celebrate Christmas, is it a strongly religious holiday, a somewhat religious holiday, or not too religious? 35% said somewhat religious. Another third said strongly religious. So again, here we are with above a supermajority. And then another 28 didn't say it wasn't religious. They just said it was not too religious. So, Robert, here we have all these people who say they're in the other category and they don't go to church. It doesn't mean they're atheists or non-believers, or even agnostic. They just don't like the church.
Correct.
Think about that.
Exactly. And that's
Wayward sheep, bro.
People have to separate out church-going crowd from the non-church-going crowd,
for sure,
without thinking that their beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, are radically different. Because sometimes their culture. Here's the difference: your cultural evangelical, your cultural Catholic, won't be like Matt Walsh running around or Ben Shapiro or the Daily Wire crowd running around preaching at people. Right? They won't say that the problem with the dating society right now amongst young men and women is because young men aren't going to church enough, right?
Yeah.
That's where you see it have political fallout. And that's where it's really the other aspect, and this goes back to 2016. The core of the anti-Trump vote in 2016, aside from what I would call the corporate upper middle class wing represented by John Kasich, that Ted Cruz tapped in the South and other places, Kasich tapped in places like New Hampshire, was your upper middle class church-going evangelicals, right? These were the voters. I grew up with these voters. These are the voters that, we don't need the government involved in things. We have charity. And it's like, and I was like, that's kind of funny because I don't see a lot of charity to
Where
poor
is it?
people that are in your friggin' church. These people disproportionately are working in middle class. They're more downscale in the socioeconomic stratum. They're people who've had negative. These are the people the church, frankly, has failed. They've failed them in culture. They've failed them in education. They failed them in economics. The church used to be a place that provided support, really was what the upper middle class conservative wing said, which was it used to be a social safety net. The church used to provide that. It doesn't anymore. And the same with the Catholics. The Catholic Church was frankly better at it than most Protestant churches have been historically, but both have failed. And many of them, just got accustomed to lecturing their parishioners. I mean, they did it to my father. My father was unemployed in Tennessee Temple, and they lectured him for being unemployed. It's like he got fired for speaking up for people. I have
a similar experience.
It's like Amy Coney Barrett. I got deep resentment against a lot of these people. And when I saw Amy Coney Barrett was from the Old South, I was like, she's not going to be a reliable vote for the causes we care about on the popular side of the aisle. And we were dead right about that. Remember how much crap we got on that from people? We turned out to be, who was the decisive vote not to take all the key election cases? Who was the fourth person?
Coney Barrett.
Exactly.
Yep. And we said, pick, what's her name in Florida?
Lagoa would have been much better. Put a Cuban on there. That's okay. They understand how stolen elections work. So
that's where they're from, brother.
Exactly. So so I think you'll see my instinct. It sounds like what you're describing. How big? Well, I guess here's the second question. Of the non-Trump vote in Iowa that you think will stay a non-Trump vote on caucus day, how much of that is never Trump versus they like Trump, they just want an alternative and will stick with the alternative because you're right, because this isn't like going into the voting booth. Here you get verbal pushback at the caucuses against your beliefs. So that's a very different kind of dynamic. And I think you're right in that live dynamic that what will shake out is anybody who really still likes Trump is going to drop off to Trump. So all that's left for the non-Trump candidates is the anti-Trump vote.
Yeah.
How big is that? And number one. And number two, given that dynamic, shouldn't it almost be even money between even odds between DeSantis and Haley as to who finishes second?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the point I'm making, because if we pull up my Iowa poll real quick, right? And don't worry, guys, we'll do a lightning thing. If we pull up my Iowa poll real fast, and I can show you even where it's all. I love that we're doing this, bro. Have you had a chance to go through our maps, dude? They're so awesome. All right. If we go through this, it's just so cool. I thought I changed this to hexagonal binding. This is the old one. Wait, bear with me. Let me go to the blog section. I'll find it quicker if I go to the blog section. It's Trump's favorability, right? It's like basically 8 and 10. And there it is. Oh no, what am I doing? Here we go. I knew I did hexagonal binding and the new ones because it showed it better. You know what I mean? And they weren't overlapping as badly as they were before. But if you look at for instance,
what's interesting on the map side.
Look on the map.
Northwest Iowa is the heart of that cultural event. Church.
Look at that. That's what I'm trying to.
Trump.
Yup. Look at that. I mean, all the way from Sioux City to Des Moines, look, even if where Davenport is, and we know he's going to rock the eastern cities, but because he even did last time against Ted Cruz. So but really that's where Haley will get some support.
Right. It's going to be the suburbs and the university towns.
Yes, absolutely. And then, maybe DeSantis wins some small rural counties here and there. There's some parts outside of Des Moines where in the Southwest where he's doing, you could see it right there where he's doing somewhat better. But it's not enough to take like a majority anywhere. Here's the thing. Only about 22% of the vote is like whether they either don't like Trump or like they somewhat dislike him. You know, it really is that he has an almost 80% favorability rating in that state. So among Republicans. So I just don't know how you can, if you're Ron DeSantis, how you can convince people when you're losing this bad, because people, momentum in primaries is a real thing. And when they go into that caucus site, Trump's people are going to say, he's a loser. You're wasting your vote. We're going to win. Just join us and let's do this thing. They're not going to yell at them like DeSantis's people do. That's not how Trump's people are. It's like they're all little mini extensions of Trump where they massage the shit out of you and, you know, and basically flatter you. You know, we love your support. We need your support. You know, that's what they're going to do. Haley's going to take the 1 out of 5 who say, I just don't want to vote for Trump. I don't like him. It's time to move on. She's going to take those people more than DeSantis is. That leaves DeSantis with the task of fighting Trump over the 80%. And that's why the CBS News poll is showing that he's losing that fight, but he grabbed himself 20%. I don't know, brother. I don't see it. I really don't. Could I be wrong? Sure, sampling errors for subgroups are higher. It's a 4% sampling error because it's Iowa, you know, but I don't know, Robert. You know what? Iowa State, Iowa State, and now even Ann, we're all wrong. I think that it is even at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And
Rubio outperformed too, brother. Remember?
If we were setting the odds, what would we put the likely median performance at for Trump? Is it 65%, 60? Where is it, do you think?
Oh no, I put him in. I think that Haley is going to do better in the burbs. I do. So I think that, you know, if think about this. George W. Bush taking 41% in 2000 was supposed to be a rock star performance in Iowa. I am now seeing the potential that he could take 60% plus because it's possible. I know people are going.
It sounds like to me, to be honest with you, especially because of the live dynamic.
But I
there's
would conservatively say
them, people challenging them, people questioning them.
Yeah.
And the trend is going to be in that direction. So if we put Trump around
55 is an easy bet at this point. 50, and we're at 51, but that's only first choice. I'm going in, and on my mind is locked in. So you got to think about. I try to tell my audience this all the time. Polling a caucus is different. So when I'm telling you he's got 51%, I'm telling. And by the way, vast majority of them are locked in. That's like his base. His core is like 4 and 10. They're never budging. So that's first choice base going into that caucus. Given the dynamics we're in now, how likely is it that DeSantis or Haley's team are going to convince 10% to abandon him? Not likely at all. What's more likely is that 51% is his floor, and that when the rest of them do their fighting, do their arguments, you know, back and forth, it's easy to see him notch another 4% to get to 55. It's plausible to see him notch.
Is that that other 50, half of them really like Trump.
35%. You know what I mean? Like this is what I'm saying, 30 to 35%.
So you could easily see him top. So his floor is 50. Easy see him topping 6. So
he can do that. Absolutely.
If we were setting the odds, like people were going to come in and bet on or against us, at least 55% would be the median Trump performance.
That's what I really would put it at that, because 55. I'm seeing a bunch of DeSantis people, at least 40% of DeSantis' vote in our poll was like, look, you know, I like Trump. If it's Trump, it's Trump, you know? So those people saying that are telling us right now they like DeSantis, but when they get in there and when Trump's people make a pitch to them, they're not hardcore DeSantis, only 30. And if I pull it back up again, you'll see it. Hold on. Let me put it up and scroll down. His core is pathetic. His core is 5.3%. Nikki's core is 2.5%. Those are people who say, that's my first choice and I will not change my mind. Look at Trump's. I mean, this isn't even close, brother. You know, like, this is what I'm saying. This is not a traditional Iowa caucus situation. This is not close.
DeSantis' floor is under 10%.
It is. Oh, absolutely. I've made those tweets, and his team goes nuts at me. And I'm like, listen, here's the arithmetic. I even put it in the chart for you. You know, like, this is what it is, man. Each, you know, like, that's all there is to it.
Haley's internal campaign numbers must be showing her surging in Iowa, because my understanding is she's thinking about not doing the Iowa debate. Only way she doesn't do that Iowa debate, aside from getting beat up in the
She's
last
worried
debate, but
about screwing
is
up.
that exactly. And you're only worried about screwing up if you think you're ahead.
Yeah.
Iowa.
There's
She's
no
already
doubt.
ahead in New Hampshire in terms of DeSantis. And she obviously, her home state of South Carolina, she'll kill DeSantis one-on-one amongst that non-Trump vote. And I'll give her credit. I mean, DeSantis can wear his heels and try to pimp around, but Haley knows how to be a hoe. She's already cashed in big time, and she's going to keep cashing in. Credit to Vivek for calling her out for it.
Just so everyone knows what we're talking about, and in case you didn't catch the Politica, if you weren't watching last week, I read a political article that made a reference to this. They said, listen, when it comes down to it, Haley knows how to earn people's support, win people over. She's has a history of cheating. Yeah,
I mean, she knows how to be a hoe. She's a class A.
She's the right-wing Kamala, dude.
Top-notch hoe.
She's a right-wing Kamala, dude. Let's be real. Come on.
Exactly. She's like, hey, Kamala's part Indian too. Maybe it's
maybe that's the thing.
Bloodlines. Maybe that they just know how to be.
I can hear Jay now on locals going, "Oh hell no! Don't you do that to us." Hell no.
I'm obviously just joking for the people who still don't understand the comedy.
Yeah.
That was my. I even heard my Dave Rubin joke. Once I found out that DeSantis likes to wear heels, I was like, that's why Dave Rubin likes DeSantis so much.
Dude, what is Dave doing going on Bill Maher with two seasoned dudes who've been around for man, Carville just destroyed him. He laughed at him.
Carville's
his head was in his lap
I debated Carville. That would be a lot. I debated him back at Yale.
Did you?
Yeah, and because I used his own words against him.
Man, I'd love to see that.
It was and he was laughing the whole time, and he's a Huey Long fan because he's from Louisiana. Yeah, Earl Long fan.
Right.
So I had Long quotes in there, but I had his own quotes about the Clintons' corruption in the sense
I'm a
of
Huey Long fan,
serving the establishment, how he wanted to come back as the bond market. Like, who the hell is Barbara Streisand to tell people what to do? And I just used all those. Like, it's right. I was like, turned out you got up to Washington, and the people running your White House are the same people you've made fun of for the last 20 years. That you've mocked, that you've satirized, that you've criticized. And he was nice. He likes to travel minor league baseball park. So he asked me where I was from, Chattanooga. He goes, "Oh, that's the home of the Lookouts." Yeah, that's great. So Engel Stadium, oldest historic Engel Stadium. But
he was mocking him because Dave doesn't know.
But I told all these people, if you had any political life expectancy, don't jump on the DeSantis campaign and convince him not to run.
Yeah.
And DeSantis, if DeSantis wouldn't have run, would I have been right that he would have been on the ticket? If he had endorsed and embraced Trump, campaigned for Trump, he would have been everybody's choice for vice president.
Somebody had pushed in there before what you had said. So I saw it in the comment section. Somebody said, that we told you that George Soros wanted this all to go down just like this.
These people to attack each other.
He was a shoo-in.
The only bet I got wrong was thinking DeSantis had enough political IQ not to take the bait, not to be convinced that Trump was going to get sidetracked by the indictments and the cases that were coming, because he was given a heads up on that before anybody else. And that's how they convinced him to run. I mean, the money was just the sweetener with the Murdoch book deals. But the real reason they got him in was they convinced him that the indictments would take him out.
Yeah, of course.
And the deep state apparatus advised him of that months in advance of those indictments coming down. And that's what got him in. And but we said at the time, I mean, is this the worst kamikaze campaign in American political history? I mean, to me, it almost is.
It's got to be.
The guy who had the presidency, vice presidency to the presidency on a golden platter that completely sacrificed it. Because I don't think he's got any political future after this. I think he's done.
Dude.
He's going to go to Washington, be on the think tanks, maybe show up on Fox News.
I was just going to say, contributor job.
His political career is over. And poor Casey is going to be crying for years she was going to be walking around as first lady. And I mean, we were talking about, the draped colors. She had it all, designed, probably had all the rooms designed.
French wallpaper.
The wallpaper, the carpet, all the rest. You know what Trump will do? Trump will probably invite her in to show her around. Just to remind you could have had that.
He will do that.
He
He'll do
absolutely will
something
do
like
that.
that. Trump will do something like that. All right, guys, I'll
He
get
was
to
like
some of them.
Melania. Why don't you show her around all the things that could have been hers?
Tony's got two. Let's start with locals though first. All right, let me see if I can get them. What are the odds Steve Deason Company straight up call Trump the Antichrist before DeSantis officially pulls out? Oh, Ryan, and then he's got a couple others. But I'll tell you right now, Steve Deason, the last time this happened, went on MSNBC half crying, said he's not going to be involved in the election. He actually told MSNBC.
People forget. Like a lot of people were introduced to Steve. Up front, I've always liked Steve. Put him on sidebar.
Oh yeah,
I like his personal story. I like his deep beliefs, etc. But what most people don't know is they're introduced to Deese because Deese became, he wasn't initially, but he became a great advocate on the COVID issues. I mean, let's be honest. Me, you, and Alex Jones were the only people that were initially
That's
right.
it.
Response. That was it. But some of these people jumped on and so people were introduced to that version of Steve. They forget in 2016 he was a never Trumper. He was talking about voting Hillary at different points. I mean, he went batshit insane because he was so deeply embedded with Cruz and so anti-Trump. And that's why you scratch the surface on a lot of these guys, and overwhelmingly they have never Trump, anti-Trump history. I mean, Kurt Schlichter, God bless his soul, maybe wasn't the right lawyer to bring that Sidney Watson disaster of a lawsuit against Blaze. But putting that aside, he was a never Trumper early on in 2016. So a lot of these guys were on the wrong side of the populist issues at key junctures in the past. Or even recently, either on the pandemic. Will Chamberlain was horribly wrong throughout the pandemic. A good number of them are wrong.
I was just going to bring him up. Yep. Will's another one. One.
We're wrong on election issues. So a lot of these people don't have good populist instincts. And I think Steve will be fine because he's got a unique voice. He is a person of principle. I just think he's misread the tea leaves politically. He's never been a genius political strategist. He's actually an above average sports bettor. Though his Michigan team is going to get the living crap kicked out of him in the playoffs, is my prediction. Tennessee's playing Iowa. That's why I got the Tennessee hat on. They're going to be playing Iowa, a few weeks before the caucuses coming up. Got a lot of friends up there in Iowa. But but Deace will survive, but no one will see him as a political
He'll be in
Nostradamus anytime soon. But his buddy Bob Vanderplatz is DOA in Iowa after the caucuses. No one will take him seriously again after this.
Here's something right up.
People like Jeff Rowe, he'll still be grifting. And
oh God, Robert! Oh God, this is the thing. His team has been gobbling up congressional races all over the country. I mean, and by the way,
that's because the RCCC, the RSCC, the RNC is still the problem. They threaten candidates. Who was it that jettisoned you and then blew up his general election campaign?
Several of them. John Gibbs. I hate to say it.
I mean,
John Gibbs should have won that.
How did that? Absolutely. I mean, there's race after race. Blake Masters went with some poor people,
which he knows.
The Senate campaign. Yeah. I mean, we could have told him, don't talk about changing Social Security in Arizona, Blake. God bless you. I mean, come on. I mean, how politically astute do you have to be to know? In a state with a bunch of senior citizens that vote Republican, I mean, like even Trump has been hammering this forever. I mean, Trump's always got this. Why are you came on board? Social Security and Medicare. This is just stupid. Did you have a political death wish?
I wish Blake didn't run, and I wish he would have came on board to an idea we both had. Unfortunately, bank your vote at the RNC is a joke, and Blake would have been a tremendous asset helping people with the early vote situation and registering voters. Yeah,
but they got to quit listening to these insider consultants that give terrible advice.
Which he did again. I know it for a fact. I spoke to him. We had a great conversation.
Dave Hamada, don't waste your vote that way. Trump's already endorsed Hamada. Okay, that's it.
Win.
That primary is now done. You get out. That's
remember
the
when
message.
DeSantis'
Trump
people
made that message? That's the message.
That's another thing. Remember when DeSantis' people started calling Kerry Lake a grifter? You remember that? It was just oh my God. You have you
Jenna
don't really
Ellis
want to win.
I mean, we forecast that too. After it became clear that she was a sellout, that she was an unreliable individual. Now she's talking about statutes to Allah. Statutes to Allah. Statutes to Allah. I was like,
Unbelievable.
oh, whatever. I mean, this is someone that's on the slow side of slow. God
She's
bless her.
dumb. That woman is stupid. I don't know why. And first, she should never have grifted herself into Trump's world, but it's
That was
amazing.
Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell.
I was just gonna say
Be
it's
blunt
amazing
about
how
it.
people like Jenna Ellis were standing there and not you. Like it really is just unbelievable. But I'm glad you and I bailed on Georgia when we did, bro. We would have ended up on the ass end of that thing.
Yeah, we'd be on that indictment charge.
We'd be on that fucking indictment, Robert.
I don't think they would be crazy enough though to indict us.
Yes.
That would have been a different animal.
As soon as we saw where that was going, though, Robert and I were like,
we said so at the
"This is
time.
crazy. We're
say,
outta
okay,
here."
I said, no, you're gonna blow up. You have a beautiful that Georgia election contest Trump filed, the only one he ever filed, 400 plus pages, beautiful election contest, never heard because of all the nonsense that was going on that allowed the judges to hide from the public.
That's what they did. They allowed the judges to kick the good challenges of really challenge. It was really only one that was good.
Yeah.
They allowed with the nonsense, and these people just came out of the woodwork with their charts and their curves and their this and their that. Like, hello, there are precincts that are 95% Democrat. What are you talking about? Like, just not and the machines.
I remember people trying to tell me San Francisco, this precinct couldn't have gone 90. It's a 98% white district. Have you been to that part of San Francisco, my friend? I mean, come on. Whereas we had the data, from all over the place to prove what happened in Georgia, which that Dominion case that's going on now is because of overvotes from Abrams' political machine that the lieutenant governor blamed Dominion for when Abrams just stole the votes and didn't give them to him.
And she didn't go down the rest of the damn ballot.
Because the lieutenant governor didn't write the check. You got to write the check to get those
votes.
Get
the vote? You don't get the vote if you don't write the check.
Exactly.
Come on now.
That's why Biden got those votes, but some Democratic Senate candidates didn't because Warnock hadn't yet written the check. So he did by runoff time, but he didn't initially. But to this question, I think what's interesting
right
here,
up your alley.
I mean, I explained on the Duran that in America, nobody, the overwhelming American side, to the degree they take a side, half the country ain't going to care. Half the country, Israel's not our issue. Who cares? Whatever. Some foreign country. But to the half of the country that cares about this issue, overwhelmingly, they're always going to take the Israeli side over Hamas. They're not taking the side that, today in a TV show or a movie, or if you're out in the street and you hear Allah Akbar, you don't go, oh, I feel so good. It's just like Merry Christmas. No, you're looking around for where the bomb is. So that's the reality of American politics. So, we're never going to take the Hamas side. Only the Jew haters, the Fuentes, the David Dukes, the Jew haters.
They put us
never going to take that side. I think the interesting thing is on the Democratic side. This is just like late 1960s, going back to emerging Republican majority. It's like electric Kool-Aid. It's Thomas Wolfe. What happened when the left split? When the civil rights movement split between the Black Panthers and the civil rights movement and Dr. King after King's assassination. What happened that was early on when Palestinian became a radical chic cause, was a derivative of the communists. Soviet Union never forgave Israel for choosing the U.S. over the Soviet Union in the Cold War. They thought all those lefties in Israel were going to pick the Soviet Union, of course. That's why the Soviet Union was the first country to recognize Israel. Then when Stalin figured out, he'd been had, because turns out Jews aren't stupid. They weren't picking the losing side, they blamed him. They helped make Arafat from the little college student into, the camos,
what he
like
became.
Che Guevara, in between finding random boys to bang along the way. That's who old Yasser was. You could say in that sense, he had a certain deep tradition within that culture down there. But putting that point aside, Americans are not taking the Hamas side of the equation. Like Scott Ritter or Scott Horton or these guys running around, Scott Ritter suggesting that they make Hamas the majority of Israel effectively by folding them into all of Palestine, giving the majority to the Palestinian Arabs, which would give Hamas nuclear weapons, by the way. Just doing the math. For those people who haven't figured out what right to return really means, it means Arab Muslims become a majority of Israel, and then they have the nuclear weapons. Hamas with nuclear weapons
You
Never an
always get
option for America.
criticized, Robert. People are like, yeah, you and Robert are America first until it comes to Israel. It's like a
No,
totally
still America
different
first. I'm
situation.
not with Ben
What are you
Shapiro. I'm not
talking
going
about?
to wage some dumb. Oh, we don't need to be there militarily whatsoever.
They
There's all
handle
kinds of
things themselves. Just
yeah.
let
They've
them
been
do it.
darn good at it for a very long time.
Yep.
It's just if you're asking me which side I'm taking, it ain't the Hamas side of the equation. That ain't ever happened. And if anybody who's sane or has survival instincts of any sort, there's a reason why ain't nobody moving to Palestine or honeymooning in Palestine. So for those reasons. But I think the Democrats have the much bigger problem. The right's gonna, outside of your Jew haters, the right is gonna be unified pro-Israel to the degree they care. They won't want to get too involved, but they'll be pro-Israel.
Yes.
The left, because they unleashed these wokesters, brought back the old commie ideologies.
Always going to happen.
You know, the Students for Palestine, that group is a Marxist group. You dig into a lot of these groups, they admit they're Marxist groups.
Oh, it was inevitable, Robert.
This is old Cold War era communist rhetoric, colonizers, imperialists. You know, listen to that. That's a woke college student. And yet I have so-called conservatives using that language. You know, like, do you recognize the words coming out of your mouth? I mean, you sound like you're from the American Indian movement and you want to restore all of American land to the Native American tribes and kick us all out, you morons. So we're a lot more colonizers and imperialists than Israel is. That every country in the world, by the way, is a colonizing imperialist country. Nobody originated from where they're at. The people who have the best claim is Israel. At least they've got Jewish history going back to the foundation of any government in that region throughout its entire history. But the left is going to all these upper middle class Jewish donors, think tank guys, university administrators, board company guys that didn't realize, remember Sam Adams? Be careful you ride a tiger, lest the tiger eats you. They let the tiger of lefty woke revolution unleashed on college campuses. They unleashed it on the world with BLM protests, and now the revolution's coming back to guillotine them. And they're all shocked by it. And it's the Democrats that are going to have serious, serious trouble because they've got all these young, crazy, loony wokesters. They're going to lose the Muslim votes that only matter in Michigan, but they do matter in Michigan.
They're bailing, dude. They said they're bailing. They said, we today they held that press conference in Michigan. It was hilarious. They're like, today we announced that Donald Trump will be elected because you can't win without us, and we ain't voting for you. It was hilarious.
Oh, exactly. And that's the one place they're 1-2%. They're going to lose. Biden's going to lose some Jewish votes on this. I mean, it's not a big percentage.
I was just going to bring that up. Trump, when we lean, because there's going to be something historic. I'll text it to you. I'm not going to tell everybody yet, but there's going to be something historic with the two-party vote share for Trump in the history of our polling ever of Donald Trump in presidential races. But he's always been very low with the Jewish vote in our polling. When we lean, he's at 39% of the Jewish vote, and that is insane for people. And of course,
people don't know that's a 75 to 80% Democratic vote.
Yeah, it should be
for
70,
over a
30.
century. For over a century,
not 60-40.
The only vote Biden's going to hold is the deeply anti-Republican Jewish vote, and then that part of the Jewish vote that's anti-Israel. People forget about 1 in 4,
self-loathing.
Yeah. Well, also they go all the way back to the communist split. People forget, that was the anti-Zionist wing. We're all Jewish communists, right? That's why people keep talking about Candace Owens pretending she didn't know who Norman Finkelstein is.
Oh, come on.
I mean, I get
like
it.
Candace, but come on.
Blame Candace. You want Tucker to hire you. You want out of your Daily Wire contract because you figured out with Steven Crowder, he got a better deal than you did, and going on his own with Rumble. So and I'll give her credit. I mean, she's sitting around thinking, how do I get Ben Shapiro to fire me? Oh, keep saying nasty stuff about Israel. Put Norman Finkelstein on.
And somebody at his events, please make sure you have a cell phone in case he says anything about me. I can make a thing out of it. Let me get through Tony's and others. So second Q, why are there no big conservative influencers and streamers and talks with groups to use their fans to canvas or other things like Destiny and Progressive Victory? Well, Charlie Kirk is doing things like that. I can tell you Turning Point Action is.
They're probably the lead on doing that.
Yeah, they are. I'm still withholding judgment on what I think of it because I was asked, what would you do for a major get out the vote? The fact of the matter is the RNC struggling, man. There's nobody to pay these people anyway. Turning point is kind of like sucking the oxygen out of the room between them and Trump. I just don't want to see people reinvent the wheel and, miss the
And we should
important,
explain
critical stuff.
that's why we haven't jumped into a bunch of spaces. If there's other people already inhabiting it, one, you won't be able to raise the funds to make
That's
it work.
been the issue.
Second, you have duplicative work. So you need to see what the landscape is before you can step in.
We'll see what they're doing.
Something.
We'll see what they're doing. And then D. Miller is more of a statement, really. You guys remember Torricelli? Of course I do. The conga line of corruption with Forrester. You think that they're using that playbook this time, or is it too late? I think a lot of that stuff, honestly, a little too late. I just think we're in a different world. And I think, somebody had wrote an article about, pundits, yes, we're paying attention. And it's just a new age of information. And, I just don't know that people can get away with that kind of thing. New Jersey's still a machine. It's still machine politics. But
I think where we'll probably be active, because I'm unsatisfied with where things are currently, unless it changes quickly
Nevada.
in 2024. Yeah, not only Nevada, but I think focusing our efforts on election integrity issues. So leveraging Free America Law Center, which I helped found, to be the lead on a lot of lawsuits they're going to bring in 2024, bringing public attention, rather than organizing our audience for canvassing, organizing our audience for election observing, organizing our audience for teaching them how to do Open Records Act and FOIA requests. That's what led to the discovery in Georgia that there were almost 20,000 votes that were phantom votes. It was started out from an Open Records Act request in Georgia that I was telling people to do all the way back in 2020. That has led to a lot of the key disclosures and discoveries that have taken place here.
Well, there's an effort in Michigan there was an app that was built 16 seconds basically to register a voter and put them on the permanent absentee ballot mailing list. I'm going to wind up tapping people for that as long as it's viable for me to do. And it's, first of all, legal for me to do. And second of all, whether it's, I know it would be viable, but we'll see about that. I think that, in the hands of people like my people, they would go nuts and they would register a ton of people. I just need to make sure that that's all right for me to do. And then, gentlemen, it won't be Biden. So who's it going to be? Raul, I'm telling you, they're stuck. They can't leapfrog a black woman who's the vice president.
We both know people. Why is Biden better, more popular than Harris, than Newsom, than Buttigieg, than all these other candidates?
You're stuck, man.
It's because of old blue-collar Democrats in the Midwest.
Yeah,
these are voters that recognize Joe Biden and feel empathy towards him. It's someone they know, someone they're like your old blue-collar voter in a Democratic-leaning voter in the working-class North. They're not bothered by corruption. Their political machines have been corrupt for over a century.
Yeah,
they were just fine with that as long as they got the bounty of it, got some part of the bounty of it. So that part of the allegations against Biden do not bother them at all. They're not happy with where things are economically or overseas, but they think Biden is doing the best he can.
Yeah, that's right.
He's identifiable to them.
Better than that guy.
We're not that weird slick guy from California.
Yeah.
Basically, every other Democrat has all of Biden's baggage without any of Biden's benefits.
Yeah.
And that's why Democrats are stuck with weekend at Biden's for the next year.
Yeah, they can't leapfrog Kamala Harris and give Newsom a white guy like that. They just can't do that.
There's only one person who could sneak in.
Yeah, I don't want to say out loud somebody who it would be, I think, an issue. I don't even want to say it out loud, but I suspect you're pretty close to it as well. So, that you would know who I'm talking.
It's not Gavin Newsom.
It ain't Gavin Newsom.
There's only one person, and everybody should know who they are,
Yeah.
Who has the political know-how to somehow weasel their way into another nomination.
How many
that candidate too would not be beating Donald Trump in election day, and would be weaker than Biden.
Absolutely.
Every other Democrat's weaker.
Yeah. I mean, Biden, I hate to tell everybody, is their strongest candidate that's viable right now. I mean, he is. There is one that is a little bit stronger, I'd be concerned, but I'm not, like I said, I think we all know, and I'm not saying it out loud in case they're listening.
How many Senate seats do Republicans flip? I'll tell you right now. When we polled Pennsylvania, I'll be honest with you guys, Dave McCormick was double digits behind Donald Trump. And when I say double digits, I mean like 16 points, running 16 points behind Donald Trump. He's going against a legend. Pennsylvania's going to be hard, and doing a hedge fund guy from inner Allegheny is not the way to do it. Someone from who's like the son of a daughter of a steelworker from Erie or Northampton would have been the way to go. But instead, they did not, because all Mitch McConnell and the National Republican Senatorial Committee care about is whether or not somebody can fund themselves. And I like Dave. He seems like a real nice guy, but he's not the right guy for Pennsylvania. That's number one. Number two, Tester is not going to be easy to beat. With Trump on the ballot in Montana,
That dude always hangs in there.
He hangs in by a point, 2 points.
You know, I know there was talk of it back a ways, but I thought like that would be a potential place if Donald Trump Jr. wanted to enter politics. He's been to Montana a lot.
Rosendale's screwing it up, brother. Like, they could beat him. It's just that they have to do it right. And Rosendale is really messing things up. Bernie Moreno, I think, is going to beat Sherrod Brown, but he's going through the JD Vance motions. He started in last place in the primary, but he was the only MAGA candidate, the only choice. Frank De La Rosa is beating Sherrod Brown in the polls, or older polls, but that's only because everyone knows who he is and they relate him as a Republican. But the truth is, it'll come out that he's a never Trumper. He's full of shit. He's lying to everyone about being pro-Trump, and that will kill him. And I'm telling you, watch Northwestern Ohio, watch Northeast, all through the northern part of the Ohio Valley. That will go against him. We'll lose Mahoning and Trumbull. It'll get killed, and then he'll lose. So Bernie Moreno is the only way they have a shot there, Robert. I really believe that.
There was a great candidate that could have run, but for various reasons wasn't able to in Ohio. Yeah. That would have, but because a JD Vance style candidate would win Ohio easily.
Yeah,
but without that, Ohio's up for grabs.
And Bernie is no JD Vance. Let's be honest.
Always been an up for grabs state outside of Donald Trump.
Outside of Donald Trump, let's be honest. Trump, by the way, we just pulled Ohio, was up by 14 points, Robert. I'm like, whoa. I don't know if you got a chance to digest a bunch of the Rust Belt polls, but just unbelievable. Speaking of which, I'll leapfrog a little bit and get to one. Somebody asked Jerry or Spider.
Carrie Lake will be elected an Arizona senator.
Yeah, I do too. I think that she will, because
Republicans have a shot in Nevada if they nominate the right person.
If they nominate the right person, and actually, I have my eye on someone. I like her. The party doesn't, but I like her, and I'm going to bring her on the show. I think I want to go out and meet her. Actually, I think I want to go to Nevada and meet her. There's just some people get in and don't realize what a skeleton means. And I just want to, when I like someone, I go make sure that my version of a skeleton is not the same as everyone else's, because Democrats and the media and the Republican establishment, if they all decide they don't like you, they make the biggest thing out of nothing sometimes. And that could hurt. But she's pretty. She's from there. She's got a great story. And she's MAGA, and I think that this is the year with Trump on the ballot. If you're going to pull something, you better do it now. And not for nothing, but if Trump wins the White House, they lose, but Republicans lose the House and the Senate, we're going to have a very, 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 very hard time. So, listen, Dreher says, should Trump campaign in Minnesota? Rich says yes. Barnes says no. It depends. Honestly, I do think because he's winning so big elsewhere,
if he could
help, he can expand the map.
If he could help candidates down ballot, then yes.
I think he could take it this time, Robert. He's only lost it by 7.
Oh, but
other candidates are on the ballot,
if he's winning Minnesota, he's already winning the whole election pretty easily.
Well, that's right. That's right. But make them work for it.
I would if you're really dominating nationally, I would campaign wherever you can help people down ballot. That's what I would.
So you're saying focus on the Senate quite a bit.
Like I just Senate and the House. Campaign in those states, get out those votes in the House and the Senate, that he's, particularly people that are aligned with him, really work hard. Yeah. Like, quite frankly, even though he endorsed people, he did almost no joint campaign events during 2022.
No, he didn't. And I got to be honest with you. Every time I spoke to his team, I asked him that. I said, don't you see that you have to win this the way he won it?
If he would have campaigned with Carrie Lake in Arizona consistently, Carrie Lake wins the governorship. They're not even, it's outside the margin of fraud, and they don't get to steal it from him.
That's right. I totally agree. And I also think, too, this time she's got a better chance because, listen, I'm not trying to be an ass. I'm just being realistic. Like the Lambs and stuff on the ballot pulled her down, and she was trying to be the anchor that held them all together and pulled them up. And even with, I testified in court. That's how much I believe that they robbed her. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Blake got hit with $50 million Nobody really could save him outside of Donald Trump. And Kerry Lake spent a lot of her own political capital trying to help, like Blake, and trying to help Mark Fincham, and that hurt. It even hurt Abe Hamaday to appear with Mark Fincham in so many events. When you had Yee, who stayed away, she won running away because she stayed away from Fincham and those others. And sadly, now that so the ticket was like lopsided and it was incoherent, down ballot and up ballot. With Trump on the ballot and Kerry running for Senate, it's going to be they're going to be unity. And the McCain wing of Arizona is dying, and that's why you're seeing Trump winning Arizona by large margins. There are people who are like older; they're not going to be alive to vote next year. Every year that goes by, the Republican Party gets more MAGA, whether they like it or not, because MAGA is younger and more diverse, and that's just the way it's going to be. This is I'm going to give this to you, Robert, and we can make this the last one. You got to go. I probably got to go too. This one's on the Minnesota GOP Executive Committee, and we're starting a political-oriented book club. We're thinking of it. Can I get a list of 3 books from you guys that you think I should read? And they put the Emerging Republican Majority on the list because we were talking about it. What are 2 others? Honestly, I would read the Almanac of Ohio, which is in your region. Somebody had just asked me about this. And reason why is because it is in your region, but also will show you why Ohio is now so Trumpy and what you would have to do in order to make Minnesota the same way. By the way, go to your damn gun stores, wherever they sell a hunting license, and register those people to vote. You have many, many, many people who have hunting licenses that are not registered to vote. What are you doing? All right, that's number 1. And then, Robert, you got any other suggestions? I mean, the Emerging Republican Majority is huge.
A book I often recommend for a longer historical view, but it's very applicable to Minnesota. Lawrence Goodwin's The Populist Moment.
That's a great one.
That the Granger movement was heavily based in Minnesota. So you'll understand where some of those roots are. The big Norwegian vote in Minnesota is a very populist vote. Yeah. It's anti-war traditions. It's a distinct kind of populism. So it's not your conventional. It's not your George Wallace cultural populism, right? Yeah. Wallace didn't sell well at all in Minnesota, but old school populism does, and that's why Trump made it close in 2016. You just got to survive the Twin Cities, the swamping in all the Democratic votes. But there's a reason why the 2nd Congressional District, places like rural Western that had long been in Democratic hands, are now going to be safely Republican districts in the near future. It's because of that massive realignment that goes all the way back to that kind of voters settled in those areas, having deep populist roots of a very distinct kind. And it helps you understand their populism. It's a populism that isn't necessarily anti-government institutionally. They often look to government to solve problems, but it's populism in that it's anti-corporate. It's populism in that it's anti-war. So understanding that brand of it, Lawrence Goodwin's The Populist Moment is a good historical.
That was a great suggestion. I don't know how the hell that one slipped by me, because for Minnesota, it's all about populism. And that's why the Democratic Party in Minnesota has not become part of the National Democratic Party. They remain their own separate entity because
the Democratic Farmer Labor Union.
Yep.
Go Paul Wellstone. He comes from that tradition.
Yeah. And this way you do there's just, opportunity there in the Southeast now that wasn't there before. I mean, of course, Ramsey and Hennepin, you're going to get crushed, even though Trump is doing better there. But like Washington, Dakota, he's doing where he needed to do to beat Hillary Clinton. And then the Southeast, I don't know where Olmsted's going yet, but the surrounding area around county of Olmsted is getting very, very, very Trumpy. And he underperformed there, in my expectations on 2020.
There and the Iron Range. I thought he'd really pick up the Iron Range, and they stayed vestigial Democrat. Yeah. Now, like the Iron Range is a place that Biden can probably hold. No other Democrat could hold.
I was just going to say it could have been Biden because
they recognize that tinge.
Biden 2020.
He's
Biden
your local precinct chairman. He's your local union boss. He's a very familiar political figure in that world.
That's why they call him Uncle Joe. It is,
exactly. They don't even mind that Uncle Joe likes to, diddle people.
Yeah. Jesus, man. You read his daughter's diary. It makes me sick to my stomach. I can't.
You're a pervert.
He's disgusting. Oh, I guess that's why I'm
He's
a
a
sex addict.
sociopathic criminal.
Oh my God.
The way I describe people is think street level criminal. He's smart as a criminal. He's not smart in general,
Anything
but he's
else? Yeah.
smart as a street level thug. Think street level thug, you can predict who and what Joe Biden will do.
Well, tell people, Robert, what you got going on, and you know where to go. But what do you got coming up?
Yeah, so we'll have more Barnes betting reports on the political betting markets at sportspicks.locals.com. Big profitable year in political bets this year. Big profitable bets in college football, pro football, European soccer, European football. Every sport have had big profits in the NBA finals, college basketball finals, you name it. So if you like sports betting, you like investing. But if you like political investing analysis, we'll have that at sportspicks.locals.com.
And thanks as always, Robert, and Merry Christmas to you. And we'll see you soon. All right. Keep your eye to locals for the new poll, everyone. See you later. Later. All right. That's it, folks. That's a wrap. I don't think I missed a whole bunch. I mean, there were a lot of others, but I don't think I missed any of the super chats or tip things on locals, but I don't think so anyway. But yeah, locals, keep your eye. Let me just say this again before we go. Keep your eye to locals, because I sent that crosstab. You may have seen things change here, a hair here and there. That's because of the weights that are being, but you're not going to see things change a lot. I'm not talking about a big deal. The weighting efficiency is like 99%. I'm just going to make sure I go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And then we're going to release the primaries first, which locals you've seen already. It's a friggin' blowout. And if you were looking at the ticker on the bottom of the screen, this is a very good poll for Donald Trump. And we're now, what's our Iowa caucus countdown? I don't even have it up right now, but we're very close. We're under 30 days away. And what I'm seeing is consolidation. He wins Iowa, and the CBS News poll could be an outlier, could not be an outlier in New Hampshire. He wins Iowa, defies expectations by that margin. That's why he's stressing people to do that, to deliver a big margin. If he does, then it's off to the races. And New Hampshire will move. It won't for everybody. Typically, if you run to win Iowa, you lose New Hampshire. Donald Trump is different because he didn't run the Iowa game plan. So he's not turning off moderates in New Hampshire. He's now at a majority even among moderates in this poll. So he's winning a majority across all ideological spectrums. He's winning a majority across all educational demographics, to include advanced degrees, postgraduates. He's got a slight majority there. He's winning a now kind of mid-50s majority with four-year college grads, and he's at 70+% with those who have some college or a two-year degree. A beep, a beep, a beep. That is a wrap, folks. All right. So I don't know what else to tell you. It's just, this doesn't change that quickly. Time is running out bad for everyone else, and it kind of has. Special thanks, of course, to Robert for coming on. Don't forget to check out the Wellness Company. Links are in the description. Again, keep your eye to locals. That's where we're going to be. peoplespundit.locals.com. Better yet, peoplespundit.locals.com. The poll will be out there soon. We'll drop the primaries, then we'll drop the general elections, then we'll talk more about the Christmas poll. So don't miss Inside the Numbers all this week, Wednesday and Friday, actually, noon Eastern Standard Time. We're going to go over it in great detail all this week on Inside the Numbers. All right. Nothing but love for you, folks. Thanks for watching the year-end holiday special edition of What Are the Odds? And we will see you again real soon.